I love to see the towns passing by and to ride these rails neath God's blue sky. Let me travel this land from the mountains to the sea, 'cause that's the life I believe He meant for me. And when I'm gone and at my grave you stand, say God called home your rambling man.
Welcome to Ramblin' Man Podcast, episode number 172. This one's with Darren Hughes, and we talk about film and his involvement in Film Fest Knox. Shout out to friend and former guest George Middlebrooks for the suggestion. It was great sitting down talking to Darren about movies and what they're doing with Film Fest Knox. If you'd like to learn more about that, go to filmfestknox.com, FilmFestknox, or follow them on Instagram and Facebook /at Film Fest Knox. But yeah, that is coming up November 14th through the 17th here in Knoxville, Tennessee. But yeah, thanks to Darren for being on and being such a great guest. Sponsor this week is Feral Giant. Feral Giant is a graphic design, illustration, and social media consultation company based here in Knoxville, Tennessee. So they do work for clients big and small all over the country, all over the globe, in fact. But they also do photography, videography, video editing, and audio editing, website design, SEO, writing, content development. Hell, they'll babysit your kids if it nets them money. So make sure you give them a follow on social media on either Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn at Feral Giant. And be sure to give them an email today and hire them for your next project. Without much further ado, here's the episode.
Okay.
I don't have a good intro.
Mm-hmm.
My old intro used to be, I've still never seen Game of Thrones. And people would yell at me for never seeing Game of Thrones. I was like, I didn't have HBO at that time.
Yeah.
It's too many characters. I can't keep up with all those. No,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I watched part of I watched maybe the first 3 episodes with my wife, and we realized pretty quickly it was her thing and not mine.
Oh, okay.
And we've been married so long, we were fine with like, okay, that's yours. I'm going to go do something else.
So here's the thing. Do you all have the thing of, I saw somebody do a skit on TikTok where it was, the husband was like, I know what you did. You need to just admit it. And it kept going on like she cheated on him. She was like, you watched the rest of the season of Game of Thrones without me, and she just kind of looked away. And it was like, cut. I was like, God, don't take away this app from us. That's awesome. That's great little micro content. So do you all have shows you have to watch together?
No, we used to like, this like shows how old I am and how young we were when we met. But we started dating just as X-Files premiered in '93.
Okay.
And so we watched that every, for a long time it was Fridays, and then I think it was Sunday nights.
Yep.
And so we watched every episode together. And let's see, we had Mad Men for years. And that's about Gilmore Girls.
Okay.
We watched Gilmore Girls together. We named our daughter Rory. Inspired by that. But we haven't found that show for a long time.
X-Files, I also watched from the first episode.
Yeah.
My parents were rabid, like, they both worked a lot, but they would record stuff.
Uh-huh.
Like, they were early adopters to VHS tapes.
Same.
So they would record stuff, and then we would wake up Saturday morning, and before I went off to play sports, we would watch TV shows.
Yeah.
And then we would rent a movie, usually on Friday nights, and watch it Saturday night.
Okay.
And if we had any TV shows left over, we watched them on Sunday.
As a family?
As a family.
Yeah.
We all just said, I watched Twin Peaks when I was way too young. I'm trying to think. It debuted in 89, so I would have been... I'm trying to think. Would that mean I was 11?
Yeah.
It's like, no.
I have a good friend who's like exactly 10 years younger than I am, and I was just shocked when she told me that she watched that with her mom. So I was 18, so she was 8.
Man.
Watching Twin Peaks.
Although, do you know Todd Steed?
Yeah.
I assume so.
Yeah.
He posted something and he was like, what was the thing you saw when you were too young?
Yeah.
And mine was, I was 11. And my mom and dad were film nerds too.
Yeah.
And he's flipping around. He's a big old, I know it's hard to imagine. He's a big old guy.
Yeah.
But he's a big old truck driver. And he's like, oh, hell, you got to watch this one. And it was like midnight on a Saturday. And I was like, okay. And then he went off to bed. And I'm sitting in the living room watching Deliverance at midnight, looking out the window going, are they going to come for us, Dad? At 11.
Yeah.
I was like, what is wrong? Okay. Same thing with like Once Upon a Time in the West.
Okay.
He's like, oh, hell, you got to watch this. The movie is starting. And he was like, you got to watch this. It's the greatest thing. Henry Fonda, who's the good guy, you know him from being a good guy, he shoots the shit out of a kid in the first minute. I was like, Dad, it hadn't happened. Don't spoil it for me, Dad. That's the good part. But I was also like 12.
Yeah.
I was like, well, it's probably better he actually did tell me that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My kids are 14 and 11.
Yeah.
And one thing that I regret about being a parent in this era is we've been pretty hands off on like screen time with them.
Okay.
Maybe that'll prove to be a horrible decision long term, but it was like Joanna and I were both the kids who came home from school and turned on the TV and watched TVs 8 hours a day, whatever. So we're kind of treating it the same way. But the thing that I regret that I don't get to experience as a parent as much is that type of thing where like when they were little, we would have like Saturday morning movies or whatever. And we would take turns picking the movie and we would sit down and watch it together. And my kids just like, you know, movies are my thing. I don't expect it to be other people's thing, but like, I wish my kids would like happily sit down and watch some kind of age inappropriate thing with me just for fun. And just so I could like pass down that tradition. Cause I was the same with my parents. We were the first house on the block that had a VHS or VCR.
Yeah.
First, you know, like this was like in the pre-Blockbuster video days where you had to pay an annual membership fee to join like VHS tape clubs.
I don't remember that. And the big thing for kids now is if you wanted to buy a VHS tape, it was like $75 and came in a big old case.
And it would come out like 2 years after the movie was in theaters.
There was a little movie video rental place over here in the old Kmart shopping center where the concourse is now, which used to be in Winn-Dixie, literally right to the left of it.
Okay.
And that's where I grew up going. And back then, they would get 4 copies of the big film, and if you didn't get there early enough, they were gone. So my parents would find these weird films. Yeah. Or what my buddy the Todd and I always talk about is HBO back in the day.
Yeah.
During the 80s, they would show the weirdest shit. Mm-hmm. Like I saw Billy Wilder's The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes in between two-a-days in 1992, 93.
Yeah.
I came home from practice, needed something on the background to watch, and on came a film from 1974, somewhere around there, and it was a weird, like, Playboy Vaseline on the filter kind of. But I love that film. Yeah. But it's like, HBO would never do that. Now they would never show something like that.
Yeah.
Like they've got to show Bad Boys 3 for 8 times in one day to get their money back or something. Yeah.
I grew up in a very like conservative Christian evangelical home. Yeah. Which I say that, but like my parents didn't police my media consumption too much. But I think that's one reason, like we didn't have cable until I was in high school. And so for me, it was like when I had a sleepover at a friend's house or something and they had HBO, I was just like, you know, what's on? What can we get away with watching here? Yeah. That kind of stuff. But yeah, I sort of like grew up in the over the air generation. Yeah, I've told people like, you know, when I hear Martin Scorsese's 30 years older than I am, but when I hear him talk about being a kid and coming home and watching The Late Show on the movies, like I feel closer to him.
Yeah.
like that was my childhood experience.
Yeah.
It was like you get the TV Guide. I grew up like in Annapolis, Maryland, so we got the Baltimore and the DC channels, which meant that like our TV Guide was really good because we had a relatively large amount of channels to choose from, and I would just get the TV Guide on Sundays, and I'd be like, "What's on UHF on Friday night?" You know, that kind of stuff. Kung fu movies on Saturdays.
I remember when cable only went up to like channel 24.
Yeah.
Like when it first came out, like here, and my grandmother had one of those UHF, VHF, is that right? Where it had the 2 dials?
Yeah, yeah. That's what I grew up with.
Like in her kitchen.
Yeah.
Like a little 10-inch, way up high.
Yeah.
And she is 5 foot tall. So you're like, okay, honey, can you change that for me?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Let me hold on. Let me get up.
Yeah, we had a little 10-inch black and white in the kitchen, and maybe a 19-inch color TV in the living room, and so it was like, I mean, I do think one reason I'm such a cinephile now is because if you wanted to watch TV and your parents brought home, The Birds on VHS or like a 50s musical that they had rented.
Yeah.
The choice, it's like I could sit in my room and read comic books, or I could watch whatever happens to be on the only TV in the house. And again, like as a parent, I'm actually nostalgic for that. Like I wish I could, like usher my kids, and there's nothing stopping me from making them. But
yeah. Well, Jesse Fox Mayshark every once in a while will post about what he's showing his sons, and every once in a while I'll comment. I was like, "Have you shown them this yet?" And he was like, "Not yet." And I was like, for me, it was Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
I was like, that film is fantastic. Just how quick and smart and funny, and just I love it. That's another dad movie.
Yeah.
Like that's a dad movie. I was like, you don't have to show them the super, like this is a Spanish film that only 12 people have seen. I'm not poking fun at Jesse.
Yeah.
I was like, show them this, because it's like that music in that film will get you in the first 3 seconds. Like it's wonderful. So wonderful. So you said Annapolis?
Yeah.
Annapolis, that's where you were born and raised?
Yeah.
How old were you, or did your folks still live there?
My parents retired and moved, man, it would have been 15 years ago? Quite a while ago. I haven't been back to Maryland since they retired. But I lived there, I went to a community college for 2 years, so I was there until I was 20.
Okay.
Yeah, just outside of Annapolis.
What did they do for a living? Were they anything involved with the military? Because
my parents, my mom is from a small town in southern Illinois, and my dad's from a hillbilly town in the Ozarks in Missouri.
Okay.
They met in St. Louis because my dad had the closest college to him. It's now called Missouri S&T. It's like it turns out it's actually a really good engineering school.
Okay.
So he graduated with an electrical engineering degree in '63, just as the Cold War was ramping up.
Holy moly!
So he spent his whole life working for defense contractors, and soon after they got married in '67, and soon after that he was offered this job in Maryland, and my understanding is that it was kind of like, hey, let's just do this as an adventure, let's see what other parts of the country look like. And then they really loved the area, and my sister and I grew up going to good schools and stuff. And so not directly in the military, but my dad always worked for a defense contractor.
I'm trying to remember. Do you know Patton Oswalt?
Yeah.
He grew up, Sterling, Virginia.
Okay.
And I always talk, he's done long bits about, he was like, I'm just far enough away from the cool stuff. Talking about like DC.
Yeah.
He's like, I could go in there. And he was like, where Black Flag started, but I'm in Sterling, Virginia.
No, it's so funny that you say that, because just this week I was watching Instrument, the Jem Cohen movie about Fugazi.
Yeah.
And first of all, great Knoxville movie, which I'd totally forgotten.
Yeah.
Do you know Eric Dawson?
Oh, yeah.
Like Eric shows up.
Was it you or somebody posted the screenshot of him?
Yeah. But the main thing that killed me was there's all this great footage of them playing a show at the base of the Washington Monument in 1993.
Yeah.
Which was the last summer that I lived at home.
Oh my
and
God.
I was just watching that thinking, like, I bet I was delivering pizzas that day. It was like I could have been there in 40 minutes. I could have been there. But yeah, same thing. It was like
hilarious.
Especially because my parents weren't Marylanders. I don't that does make it a slightly different experience.
Yeah.
Like I never felt like an Annapolitan in the same way that my friends whose families had lived in the Annapolis area for generations did. But yeah, we would go see baseball games, and once I got in high school, I would start going to like the big arena rock shows and stadium rock shows in DC and Baltimore. But yeah, I missed all the cool stuff. And it's funny because in hindsight, there were kids in my high school who were on it. I remember seeing the Black Flag and the Fugazi like patches on jackets, like from the skater kids. Like they all had, in hindsight, much better taste than I did at the time.
I got lucky in that 3 of my closest friends in high school, I went to Fulton, and 3 of my close friends were all art class girls.
Okay.
Like they were the punk rock chicks.
Yeah.
And they would take me to punk shows at the Mercury, where I saw Green Day on the Kerplunk tour.
Okay.
And Operation Ivy and all those Lookout Records. And big goofy football player looking dude with these 3 girls with like purple mohawks and all that.
That's the dream, man.
It was great. Like it was that, but then later on it was like I never saw Fugazi and they played here a lot.
Yeah.
It was just like, damn it, how did I miss that? But I got to see that. It was almost like we could go to the Mercury, but we couldn't go anywhere else. That was scary for us.
Yeah.
Although Mercury was scary for us at that point.
I'm sure.
In the early 90s.
But I mean, pre-internet, like it all depended on who you were hanging out with to be in the know on that kind of stuff.
Because it was also I think that was pre-Metropulse. So it's like Alt Weekly wasn't as big a thing yet. I don't think. Or if it was, we didn't know about it.
Yeah. That's a thing. I'm sure there was all kinds of stuff I could have done. But I didn't know about it.
So because they weren't from there, did you all explore that area a lot, or did you all travel a lot when you and your sister were kids?
Most of our vacation, it's funny, I've been thinking about this with like my own kids. Like most of our vacations were going back to Illinois and Missouri and just being around family.
Yeah.
My mom's one of 5 kids, and so there was lots of cousins running around.
Oh, yeah.
So that would be that trip. We took one big European family vacation when my sister was a senior in high school. That was like I think designed as like the last hurrah as the family vacation, which was awesome.
I wish I could pull her name. Rusty and was the National Lampoon.
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah. It would have been right around that time. It was 87.
Yeah.
It was 87 when we went. A year ago, I flew into Brussels, and it was the first time I'd been in that airport since 1987. And there's like another part of that story, which is we did like I don't know if this is the type of story that's told on these podcasts. It's just I have a bad habit of oversharing. But like, so I was 15, and we did one of those tours where you're just taking bus to bus to all the big places, which would have sucked. But there was a class of teenage French students from Syracuse, and like also on the same tour.
Weird. Okay.
Yeah, like French language students. Like the French class had come because we were going to London and Paris, and so I had like my first major crush on that trip, and so I still have like intense like nostalgia around that trip. So it was weird, like being back in that airport again when like she and I had made the first eye contact on that trip. It was wild, man.
Okay, so you traveled a little bit.
Yeah.
Were your parents into movies, or was that some kind you found on your own?
They love movies. They have. Okay. My dad passed away 3 years ago, but they love movies. Like my mom still goes to the movie theater more than I do.
Yeah.
She doesn't. Neither of them had any sort of. I don't want to sound condescending. They don't have taste in movies. They just love watching movies. They'll watch anything. Like I'm sure my mom has seen a lot more of the Oscar nominees of the last 10 years than I have.
Oh, okay.
You know, they were that type. So again, like first house on the block with a VCR, and they would bring home, I remember my dad renting the pan and scan version of 2001 on VHS.
Oof.
But also him being like,
Yeah.
he did guide me. Like he would be like, hey, let's just watch this.
Yeah.
I remember we watched it on like a Saturday afternoon. And so, yeah, they brought home Hitchcock. They brought home the MGM musicals. They brought home some things that were like, one of the movies that comes to mind, if you ask me, what did I see when I was too young? It was the movie Fame.
Oh yeah.
Have you
You're
seen
gonna
that?
live forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's that's an intense, like there's suicide, there's casting couches, there's all kinds of stuff. But we were big fans of the TV show.
Yeah.
And so my parents brought home the movie, and I remember watching that. It was like, maybe I was 8 or 9, and it was
Yeah.
like, oh, this is an adult movie that is about things that I can't comprehend yet. Yeah.
It's funny. Fame, Saturday Night Fever,
Yeah.
Dirty Dancing are all films. So like everybody has like rose-colored glasses about these
Yeah.
films. There's some dark shit in
Yeah.
these movies. There's
Yeah.
some truly dark shit.
Saturday Night
in it.
Fever gets better each time I watch it.
Does it?
I
I watched it once when I was a kid. I've never watched it again. I can't stand Grease, and I think it may have. I know they're not never the twain, but I think it's just layover from that. I need to watch it again.
There's such an interesting dynamic between John Travolta and I can't remember the actress who plays like the older woman he falls in love with. But the dynamic between them, it's like a great a film about class.
Okay.
Like, you know, John Travolta's character like lives in Brooklyn, and he only gets to make one trip over to the city every week, and it's to, you know, he's working in a hardware store, and the girl he falls in love with is like, she's a secretary for an office in the city, but to her that feels cultured, even though she's just like a Brooklyn, you know, working class person too. It's a cool movie.
I'm writing it down so I don't forget.
Yeah, no, it's good.
I made a face about the pan and scan, and then I'm looking at one. I'm like, wait, my dad and I watched Bridge on the River Kwai, Once Upon a Time in the West, in our TV in the kitchen.
Yeah.
It was like a 13-inch TV that it was totally on like TCM or something. So it's totally pan and scan.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's hilarious that I watched Bridge on the River Kwai.
Well, that's the thing Scorsese always talks about when he talks about, you know, how did you fall in love with movies? It was, you know, he would get into the city and he would get to go see some of the big films in the old theater, the big movie palaces. But he would also go home and just whatever was on the Late Show. And he talks about like, it's this big, it's in the wrong aspect ratio. It's black and white when it was originally Technicolor.
Yeah.
But if the movie works, you lose all of that.
Well, I remember us sitting at the kitchen table. We were eating. I'm trying to think. And it was on like TNT, maybe. One False Move. Carl Franklin's One False Move was on. So I had commercials. And it was cut for cuss words and stuff. And we still sat there and watched that whole damn thing. Our legs almost falling asleep from uncomfortably sitting at kitchen table, turning our heads, you know, watching it. And it just sucked us in. And we sat there and watched the whole damn. He was probably smoking cigarettes at that point, too, which is hilarious. We sat there and watched it. I have to brag on my parents a little bit. So, Dad, it was that. It was Taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3, Bridge on the River Kwai. The Quiet Man. That's one of his favorite films. But then also like, what's the dude's name? Terrence. The stupid, crappy, pseudo Italian films. I'm not going to remember him. His name is Terrence, and it's like a Western. Can't pull it from the 70s.
Okay.
Shitty, like not even B movie, like an E movie.
Okay.
Like that's it. But then Mom really got into movies, and like when the IFC channel came out, she had just retired from the phone company.
Yeah. And
she would just sit there all day and watch, oh, this sounds good. Mm-hmm. Almost like with the TV Guide. And her favorite film is, now I'm going to, Dogfight.
Really?
Yes. And it's about to be released. So I lost my mom last August.
Yeah.
And it's about to be released on Criterion. I was like, I am buying that damn movie. Because I love that film too.
Yeah.
But it was just like, no, honey, that's my favorite film. Like, she loved that film.
I don't think I've seen that since it came out.
Yeah. Dogfight. And then I would trade movies with her, stuff that I was finding. Like, there's this film called Tully that I love a lot. That I would let people watch it, and they all hated it. The only person who loved it was my mom and, like, Roger Ebert. And that was it. Like, it was so funny. It was like he loved the film. And she was like, "Oh, this is a great film."
Yeah.
And it's so funny. I would lend it to other friends. They're like, "This is boring and it sucks." I was like, "No, no, it's not. It's really good. You gotta trust me. It's really good." Yeah. She would watch all this. We'd sit there and watch. Is it Dress to Kill?
Okay.
Parents, any kind of violence. I could see any kind of violence, any kind of cursing, but anytime nudity came on, turn your head.
Yeah.
I got the turn your head.
No,
and
that's-
even in like Dragnet, where they were in a strip club and she was wearing pasties, I was literally sitting right in front of the TV watching it. I heard, turn your head. Damn it, she's wearing
No, that is. I don't know if that's if that's an '80s thing.
Yeah.
But like maybe that I'd like to think it's changed. Maybe it hasn't. But yeah, that was any violence was fine in movies with my folks, but nudity made people a little more
And
uncomfortable.
now I remember I still remember we went on New Year's Eve night to see, I think it was New Year's Eve night, to see Three Men and a Baby at like a 10 o'clock screening, to where we walked out and it had turned midnight when we were walking out or something like that. And I was like, man, I just remember the one that they always made fun of me when we went and saw that Santa Claus the movie
Okay.
in the theater. And it was like cold outside and they had it roasting in the theater. And both my parents fell asleep. And both of them to this day would still say, that's a boring ass movie. That's a boring ass movie. It's like, I think it was really hot in there and y'all were dressed for cold and you just fell asleep. Okay, so they were into movies, you were into movies. Was there a film that, well, let me ask this first. Do you remember the first film you saw in a theater?
So I was born in '72. So I was 5 when Star Wars came out, and so I wish I had a more interesting answer. But yeah, Star Wars really did hit me the way it's supposed to when you're 5. Yeah, that was a big one. And then beyond that, it was like once they started bringing home stuff that they'd rented, it really was like, I think Well, I was going to say Hitchcock may have been the first director's name I knew, but that's probably not true. It probably was.
Well, he also had the TV show.
Yeah,
that
it was
was
probably
a good way
like
to
Spielberg or like George Lucas. I'm sure I knew that they were people who made the movies.
It'd be hilarious if your answer was Godard. You're like, the first director I knew was Godard.
No, it's funny that I've had conversations online with other like film critics of my generation, and we talk about how in the pre-internet days, so much of like our first exposure to like European cinema was just looking for nudity.
Oh yeah.
So like I'm pretty sure the first Godard film I saw was the short that he made for Aria, which was this weird compilation movie. It's from the 80s when like European co-productions were like making these very weird movies, and so people like Ken Russell and who else was in that? I can't remember who else was part of that, but it was one of those compilation films where like the premise of Aria is that each director chooses a famous aria from an opera and makes a short film to it, and I'm sure it's bad. But
I'm gonna look this up.
But Godard has a short in there.
1987.
87. That sounds right. Yeah. So I probably would have gotten
It's called
it.
Musical comedy. Is there a comedy?
I think Robert Altman has a short in
Robert Altman, Bruce. I never know how to pronounce his name. Beresford.
Okay.
Is that how you
Beresford?
pronounce it? Yeah, that's what it looks like. Bill Bryden. I don't recognize that name. Jean-Luc Godard. Derek Jarman.
Wow. Okay.
I don't recognize that name. Frank Rodam. Nicholas
Reg? Okay.
I always want to say Roeg.
Yeah.
I think it's a southern name. Like Roeg. Ken Russell. Charles Stuttridge. Or Stewridge, however you pronounce that. And Julian Temple. Okay.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That is wild.
Yeah, Derek Jarman was a really prolific and important British gay artist who he was one of I don't know if it's fair to say that he discovered Tilda Swinton, but she was one of his close collaborators when they were young. And
him up too.
Yeah, his
it's fun. His hyphenates on here are Derek Jarman. He's got Michael Derek Elworthy Jarman was an English artist, filmmaker, costume designer, stage designer, writer, poet, gardener,
Okay.
and gay rights activist. I
Yeah.
like how Gardner is in there.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's weird. Like those films, just thinking through, like there were a lot of those. Was it New York Stories?
Mhm.
Was Coppola, Woody Allen, and Scorsese, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, what's it called? Four Rooms in the 90s.
Yeah.
There was one called Eros with like Soderbergh and Wong
Yeah.
Kar-wai. It's weird.
Antonioni, I think, was the third in that
Yeah,
one.
and then there was what was the one? There were two different ones. One of them was called Paris J. Timmy. There was like a series of three of those, and one of them had the Coen brothers
Yeah.
do a short. You don't really see. I guess with YouTube and everything, people don't feel like they need to do that anymore. Although the way film's going now, God knows.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be interesting to like read how those things came together.
Yeah.
Somebody had some money.
Yeah.
Some producers wanted to collaborate.
Yeah.
You know.
I remember seeing Four Rooms in the theater, and I was just like, I don't know if I should be here. It was so graphic and just like, Jesus, man. Did he just cut his finger? He just cut his finger off. I think I watched, not to keep going back to sports, I think I literally saw it in the theater and left there, went home, grabbed clothes, and went and played basketball. I was like, that's a mind meld there. Okay, so Star Wars. So did you get high, like when the sequels start coming out, were you one of those that was like, or even like Indiana Jones, because it was kind of tangential to
Yeah,
Star
I mean,
Wars. Were you like,
it really was
eagerly anticipating those?
like I was. I mean, not to get all like Gen X nostalgia, but like it was a good time to be a kid.
Yeah.
For pop media, you know, like I still think like pop music from 81 to 85 or so is really good.
Yeah.
Like there's great pop music. And then, you know, we could talk about like how the blockbuster hurt a certain kind of filmmaking. But like, yeah, when you're a kid and every year there's either going to be a new Star Wars movie or a new Indiana Jones movie or, you know, then like the little hybrids like Goonies and Poltergeist and all those things. It's a good time to be a kid.
Yeah. The one that I watched, the two that I watched the most as a kid, that one of them still gets talked about, the other one does not, is Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Was my, and
Yep.
and then the other one was Explorers.
Mm-hmm.
Explorers, and I will still watch it. It is a comfort film that I will put on 3 times a year.
Yeah.
Like it is just like, the score is great.
Gets so goofy at the end.
Yeah. And then I saw an interview with Joe Dante come up, and it said, hear Joe Dante talk about Explorers. I was like, oh, hell yeah. I was like, I love that film.
Yeah.
And he just shit all over it. And he was like, this wasn't the third act that I wanted. I wanted them playing baseball together. I go, does that make any more sense?
Wow.
I was like, I thought the ending kind of made sense because the aliens were kids too.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I didn't think it was very weird.
Speaking of movies I saw too young, my parents took me to see Twilight Zone, the movie.
Oh, jeez.
And I remember this day so well. I also had I think I had a fever. So like, you know, you always use that metaphor of like, that movie's like a fever dream.
Yeah.
Twilight Zone, the movie really was. I watched it with a fever, and the Joe Dante section in that movie.
I remember what the Joe Dante.
It's the little kid who is like all powerful.
Oh,
And he
yeah.
sends the mean people into the cartoons, and he
Yes.
like removes a girl's mouth. That like,
Yeah.
I still have not rewatched that movie because I have, for lack of a better word, the heebie-jeebies. Like when
Yeah.
I think about my experience of watching that as a kid.
Oh my God.
And then it was like, also I was enough aware of the news that I knew that somebody had died,
Yeah.
like real people had died during the Vietnam section. And so I think I went into the movie thinking that I was going to see real people die.
Faces of Death.
Yeah, I really did. And so, man, that movie, that's my real answer to something I shouldn't have seen when I was a kid. Yeah.
And speaking of anthologies, man, I remember
Yeah.
we watched Amazing Stories as a kid, and those things astounded me.
Yeah.
Most of them. And they were kind of like that.
Yeah.
Like weird vignettes. And you saying that made me remember Casey Shamashko. I'm probably butchering his name. Actor back then. He was in Young Guns. He was in my favorite sleeper film of all time called 3 O'Clock High.
Okay.
And There was one where he was in a bomber. I think a lot of people were in this film. It was almost like Memphis Belle, like in a bomber, World War II, and he was the gunner underneath, and they couldn't get him out, and he ended up drawing the cartoon wheels. I think Spielberg directed that one.
I'm pretty sure he did.
Spielberg or Zemeckis, one of the two. And I can still remember almost frame by frame.
Yeah.
Because we watched it in VHS. We watched it so much. If I can give you a little bit of homework, there's a band that I love called The Midnight.
Okay.
And they make music now that sounds like the 80s. And fans of theirs go and cut films from the 80s and make music videos.
Okay.
And I've seen them live 3 times. I'm about to see them live with Chromeo in Asheville this fall.
Okay.
I love them. They're fantastic.
This was like maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I made a playlist on Spotify called 80s-ish.
Yeah.
Which was just like newish records.
Yeah.
That sort of, scratch the same itch.
Yeah. There's a lot of there's a lot of bands that's what it's vaporwave. Is what it's called. Yeah. Where they have the saxophones. It's great. It's so good. Okay. Do you remember the first film when you were a kid that stood out and felt different? Other than like a Star Wars, something maybe you found on your own, or
I remember being obsessed with Robert Wise's "The Day the Earth Stood Still" from the 50s. That was just another one that I watched on some UHF channel, probably channel 20 from Washington D.C. And the first half of that movie is like so. I mean, it's the famous shot of the round spaceship that lands in Washington, D.C., and then the big robot walks out.
It's another dad film.
Yeah,
I got to watch that when I was like 6.
Yeah, I was, and so from then on, after I watched it once, I would look for it in the TV guide, and it was on pretty regular rotation. Yeah. The biggest movie for me when I was a kid was Rear Window.
Oh, yeah.
Which I got to see on 35 millimeter at a festival in Rotterdam a couple years ago, and I hadn't watched it for a couple years, but I took a break from the new movies at the festival. I was like, I don't know when I'll get to see this again on 35 millimeter. And after about 15 minutes, I just kind of settled into my seat, and I was like, yeah, this is still the best one. It's still the best movie. Like
I've seen it at the Tennessee Theater, I think like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
They re-released it, I think in the early aughts, and I saw it at Downtown West.
Yeah.
That was another one my mom was like, I think the prettiest person ever is the scene where Grace Kelly comes in. She was like, it's ridiculous.
Your mom said that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's always my go-to answer when somebody asks, like, what's the most perfect anyone has ever looked?
Yeah.
That's her entrance into the film is you see Jimmy Stewart in Profile. He's fallen asleep in his wheelchair. And then it just, cuts to her, and she's a little bit out of focus. And then she leans into the camera, comes into full focus.
It's insane.
It's insane.
Yeah, that was my mom's answer. She was like, nope, and there's this artist named Greg Ruth that he's done a lot of Criterion covers and stuff, but he's a comic book artist. Okay. That's how I know him. He's worked with Ethan Hawke on things, but they did a comic book together. But he does this weird, like black and white, like it almost looks like a painting, but I think he's using pencils of Grace Kelly from that film. And I bought one of it. I was lucky enough to get one of his prints for her. Yeah, and she put it like in their bedroom, right on the wall to where almost like when she woke up in the morning, that's what she saw.
Oh, that's
like
nice. Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to school. Was there any thoughts? Did you go to film school or no?
No, I went to community college for a couple years, and then I went to Florida State as an undergrad. Okay. With the original plan of I wanted to be a composer. I'd been studying music as a kid, piano, and my dumb joke is I was good enough to get into Florida State's music school. I wasn't good enough to stay there. Okay. Which became obvious like the first week, which was sort of terrifying. But I loved Florida State. I met my wife fairly soon after I got there. And so I ended up switching to English education as my major. But Joanna, my wife, went to the film school at Florida State. So, and we started dating just as she got into the program. Yeah. So I sort of went I wasn't going to her classes, obviously, but like I would go on her shoots and I would sit with her in the editing bays at night and got to meet most of her classmates and stuff. So I did have exposure to what it looks like to make a movie. Yeah, which was useful.
Yeah. I think they have a really good film school?
They do.
That's
they
what
do.
I thought.
They do, yeah. Yeah, she was like the graduate school has existed longer, but and it was in South Florida for a while, but she was like maybe the fifth class that came through the undergraduate program, and she was there when they like Doak Campbell Stadium, the football stadium. Actually, the film school was built when they were doing the big renovation of Doak Campbell while we were there, and they put the film studio. So it has like big sound stages and stuff in it.
Okay, so when I graduated high school, I was in printing at Fulton.
Yeah,
and one of the best printing schools in college was Florida.
Okay,
and I was too much like I can't go to Florida. I am not a gator.
Yeah,
I cannot do that.
Did you go to UT?
I did not. I went to Pellissippi.
Okay,
Pellissippi. I'm going to apologize to George when I say Pellissippi had a better design program. Okay. I'm a graphic designer. Yeah. I've been a graphic designer since I was 13.
Yeah.
And they had, sorry, George. They had a better design program because you learned the applications. You would learn theory, but you learned the applications more important.
Yeah.
And it was just, I ended up going for 3 years so I could take extra classes in sociology, psychology, and analytics, which I think is hilarious now because analytics runs the world. I took all these, what was it? God, what was that class? There were these classes I took that was like you measured numbers. I was like, no, if I want to be good at this, I've got to be able to prove that what I'm doing is right.
Okay.
If I have to do testing or anything like that. And my professor was just like, you're the only person to take extra math classes. Everybody else took English. What the hell's wrong with you? Like, I don't know. I can't explain why, but I feel like this is important. And here we are 20 years later. It's like, oh yeah, the world's run by analytics and algorithms.
Yeah.
I got lucky on that one. Okay. So you went to Florida State. Was that kind of a culture shock? Cause that's a big party school. Like my main thing was like, I just wanted to go. I didn't want to be close enough to home that I could come home for the weekend. It's one of those weird things like in life where you look back and you think like, how did that happen? And it really was for me. I'd been going to community college and thinking about, I had some aptitude for like math and engineering and stuff. And so like that was the original plan and I was just bored out of my mind. And so I was like, I wonder if I could somehow figure out how to do music for college. And I ran into a friend of mine over Christmas break who I hadn't seen for years. She had moved away. And so I was having this conversation with her and she's like, well, I go to Florida State. She was studying music therapy, basically. Okay.
And she's like, it's a great music school. It's a great school. And as soon as she said it, I was like, oh, okay, that's where I'll go. I don't think I finished an application anywhere else. It was the only place I auditioned. And so I went down there and it's one of those things where I'd like to think it's because, you know, if there's anything guiding all these decisions we make in life, it's like, oh, that's where I met Joanna. And that's where life started for me in a way. But yeah, I mean, so I ended up in the English department instead, which was a good way to meet like the weird kids. And I discovered pretty quickly that that's when I started writing and
did you start writing anything on film? Like did those two kind of merge?
When I was in high school, I had a really cool, it's that classic story. I had one really cool English teacher where the senior project was choose a film and do some kind of, I think she was just a film buff probably in hindsight. And she would rather read that kind of paper than anything else. So she let everybody pick a movie and you could take whatever perspective on it you wanted. And, a lot of film critics will say that like a defining moment in their life is when they find the Hitchcock Truffaut book, which is this, I don't know if you've ever read it or seen it, but it's just,
there's also a documentary that just came out in the last few years, I think.
Yeah.
And
it was like 1964, I think. And Yeah, Truffaut sat down with Hitchcock for like 2 weeks or something like that, and they would watch a movie and then they would talk about it. They went through the whole thing, and so growing up in the suburbs, I didn't have access to like repertory theater, cinema, or anything. There wasn't an internet culture where I could just, I'm jealous of young cinephiles who have access to everything, and then they can go online and talk to 60-year-olds about movies and stuff. Because I was sort of on an island, but that book opened up my mind a lot, and so I wrote about Rear Window, and that was I always say that was like the first film criticism I wrote.
Okay.
And then it wasn't until graduate school when I started studying cinema, when I started like writing more seriously.
Yeah.
And then
Did you read the AG books on film?
I didn't at the time.
Yeah.
I've read through most of them since then.
Yeah. I had picked up A Death in the Family because I knew it was about Knoxville. And then the minute I got done with that, found out that he had written books on films. I was like, oh, shit. Okay, these are two of my things joining, and read those when I was in my early... I cannot probably pull... My memory is gone. Cannot pull anything that he said.
Yeah.
But I remember getting those books and how... I think that was the first one I was like, holy... He was
a real deal.
There's a lot of pages here.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
he was the weekly critic for The Nation. I can't remember what journal he wrote for, but yeah, he was just sort of on the payroll for a while reviewing movies. Yeah.
There's also there's a quote that I heard early on about Roger Ebert, which I know he's the default, but it's like he said, "I appreciate when a film is what it says it is. If John Wick is going to be an action film that is just going to be ridiculous, then I can't critique it for being an action film that's ridiculous." He's like, it's when a film says it wants to be something else and it's not, that's when I'm out. I can't do it.
Yeah.
I'm butchering the shit. Of course, he said it way more eloquently than I did. But I always appreciate that because there are some films I'll watch. Now I'm looking at my Blu-rays. The A-Team. Joe Carnahan's The A-Team. I was like, this is a big, dumb, silly, blow 'em up film. Yeah. That's all this is. Mm-hmm. It's shot really well. Yeah. The action shot well. It's clever. All the actors in it are perfect. It's perfectly cast. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is a lot better than... Same thing. This is a lot better than it should be. Yeah. So I'm not going to shit on I'm probably going to watch that movie a lot. Because it's a Sunday afternoon movie. Yeah. Is exactly what it is.
Yeah, Ebert was he was important to me just because, again, living in the suburbs in my little island, the Siskel and Ebert show really was like that, and getting a subscription to Rolling Stone when I was in high school. Yeah. I don't think the film criticism there was probably great, but just have a friend who's been joking about like wanting to start a podcast called Not Coming to a Theater Near You, which is about basically like the pitch is like you go back and you watch an old episode of Siskel and Ebert on YouTube, and then you go out and rewatch the movies that they're talking about because, I remember, like My Dinner with Andre. Yeah, it's like that was a movie I was very aware of when it came out because of Siskel and Ebert, because it was nominated for some awards. Very strange movie. But it sometimes, like an art film like that, would sort of cut through the noise and get into my house, which was cool. I remember watching, The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover.
Oh God, talk about an inappropriate film.
Yeah, but I mean, I was like, I was old. I was like 19 or something when that came out, maybe. But again, like still living in the suburbs, trying to find it at Blockbuster. That kind of like.
What are you talking about? Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Oh God.
Yeah. The Ebert did have that line, like, I don't care what a film is about, I care how it's about it, or something like that. Yeah. I'm also probably butchering it, but like that was a good way of thinking about. Okay, there's decisions being made. Yeah. Every shot was designed. Every cut was designed. Like just thinking about form. Yeah. And the making of the film as opposed to just like the sensation.
Yeah. And I don't like him that much. There's this guy, Chris Hardwick, that I used to listen to his podcast, The Nerdist, because it was the early days of podcasts.
Yeah.
So
Fewer
and he
options.
had great guests
Yeah.
on. But he said something one time. He's like, it's a miracle any film gets made.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, it really is a miracle any film. Because he had someone on and they were talking about the road to some film getting made. And it was like 12 years.
Yeah.
And he was like, it is a miracle. That show, if you haven't watched, this is going to be the dumbest question I may ask you on this. The Godfather. Have you seen The Offer on Peacock about the making of The Godfather?
No, I haven't.
It's very good.
Okay.
It's very good. I love The Godfather. The last time it showed at the Tennessee, I walked in, one of my friends works the bar every once in a while, and she was like, enjoy your 3-hour-long boring ass film. I was like, oh, God, shut up. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. What's wrong with you? Like, it's brilliant. Come on, man. And that, yeah, it's, I can't with that film. But that show, The Offer, is unbelievable. I got lucky, and the first time I saw The Godfather was at the Tennessee Theater in a midnight screening in like the late 90s.
Yeah.
They did one summer where they did a ton of midnight screens. So I saw Pink Floyd's The Wall, The Godfather, I think maybe Clockwork Orange.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was 2001, something like that. And everybody in there was stoned out of their mind for all of those films. It was hilarious. I'm like, and I think maybe it was something crazy. Like they showed a midnight showing of The Godfather, and then the next night they showed Godfather 2.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's the best way to watch those movies.
Yeah. I've never seen those in a theater.
Man.
Yeah. We used to do some programming with Big Ears, which is the only opportunity I've had to program films for the Tennessee Theater.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun, like being able to bring 35 millimeter prints in, and like one day I got to just like sit alone in the Tennessee, alone with a couple other filmmakers and friends, doing a test run of like this obscure Meredith Monk film.
Oh, geez.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was like, I'm so grateful for the Tennessee Theater, and that they've kept that projector, and that there's still people in town who know how to operate it. You know, I don't know if you went to any of the Clarence Brown Film Festival in the fall.
No, I think I was out of town for part of it, and I was like, I just somehow missed it.
I didn't go to much of it, but I did go down to see the 35 millimeter print of the Signal Tower, which I'd never seen before. All which is just to say, I'm grateful that Knoxville still has a place where those types of events happen. We're able to have those types of events, and there were probably 400 people there turned out for it, and everybody was having the time of their life.
Oh yeah,
it's fun.
That makes me go back. So were you there when Jim and Guy came in to screen Instrument during Big Ears?
Yeah.
So I was there.
Okay.
I was sitting down front. I got stuck down front.
Yeah.
For that. And I was like, oh shit, they're right in front of me. This is weird, man. These guys that I've known about for half my life are standing right in front of me. This is creeping me out a little bit.
Yeah, my favorite moment of that program was whenever I've done programming festivals in Knoxville, if there's going to be a screening on like a Sunday morning, I use it as, I always think of it as like art church. And so I want to show something that's like more thoughtful, more contemplative, more quiet and stuff. And so I programmed Jim's museum hours.
Oh yeah,
on Sunday morning. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I was there. Yeah.
Okay. I love that movie. One of my favorite movies the last 20 years. And it was just, Jim did show up for the screening, and it was just fun to like be able to stand in front of an audience with him and just like thank him for making this quiet little movie that, you know.
So I realized, I don't think so. How this happened was do you know Gary Hughes? That's another one. It's gotten to the point to where you read names so much that you're like, I don't know that
he made like Helvetica,
Objectified, Urbanized, which are that underneath that painting in that plastic bag. That's the three of them together.
Okay,
but he made one on Dieter Rams, and he just made one on Brian Eno. Okay, and he's been taking it around to festivals.
Oh,
and
okay.
I mentioned, because I follow him. I think he follows me on Twitter, because those were all Kickstarter films, and
Yeah.
I backed all of his Kickstarters. And I mentioned in one of his Sundance screening, I was like, there should be a Gary Hooswet, however the hell, sorry, Gary.
Yeah.
Retrospective at Big Ears one year. Because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he's done so much. Maybe bring in Brian Eno. It'd be great to
Yeah.
have Brian Eno come into town
Yeah,
and
yeah.
perform. I was like, that would be awesome because he's made these, Helvetica, Urbanized, which is about urban planning, urban design.
Okay.
Yeah, and Objectified about objects. And then Dieter Rams, great documentaries. And
I'd forgotten that he made that new Eno film.
yeah,
There was a part of me that was hoping Big Ears this year, they had a surprise screening. Like they announced it eventually.
of it.
No, but
Oh.
not of that. But
Okay.
that's what I had assumed it was when
Yeah.
they announced,
Yeah.
surprise screening on Saturday night or whatever. I was like, I bet it's going to be that Eno film. I hope it's the Eno film. And it wasn't.
This is my. I have heard. God, you do not have to confirm nor deny. It's better as a story.
Yeah.
How about that? Big Ears. I went every year, and then they had that one year where they had the blowout with all the indie bands like Vampire Weekend,
Yep.
The National, St. Vincent. And I'd always heard two stories on why it didn't happen the next year. You do not have to confirm nor
I'm
deny.
sure I don't know.
Okay.
I'm sure I
I
don't
heard
know.
it was either they spent way too much money on that year getting
Yeah.
all those bands. And then the other story I heard was that Ashley is friends with Eno and was really trying hard to get him to program. Because that's back when they were programming, like
Yeah,
Terry
yeah.
Riley. And they were trying to get Eno to program the next year.
Mm-hmm.
And it kept going on to where it ended up not happening.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want that to be the truth because I want Brian Eno to program it one year and bring people and do interest. I'd like them to bring back the programming thing.
I miss that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you had the dude from the National, one of the,
I think it was Bryce Dessner.
yeah, and he was bringing in weird people.
Yeah.
Like performing with his band Clogs. And
I was just listening to that Clogs album
Yeah.
the other night. I hadn't listened to that in years.
Okay, so your degree is in English.
Mm-hmm.
You started playing around more with like film criticism. So did you get a job? What was the next thing for you after that?
Okay, so because I got married so young,
Okay.
in hindsight, we became adults sooner than most people become adults. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So like we got married at 23 and 24, and had a mortgage at 26. Like when we moved to Knoxville, we
Yeah.
bought a little condo and had a mortgage. All of which is to say that like, I started on these two parallel career paths very early on.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Nope.
Just knocked it. Okay, we're good. So I got my master's degree at UNC Wilmington.
Okay.
And while I was there, that was right after we got married, like a few months after we got married, and I needed income. So I got a job at this little technical training company.
Okay.
Okay, this is just a quick sidebar. So, like, they worked in the pulp and paper industry.
Oh.
So, like, their job was, plant invests $500,000 in a new machine.
Mm-hmm.
They need to document it. They need to put together standard operating procedures. They need to put together a training program, whatever. And so this tiny little company I worked for would do that. This was in 1996. And after I'd been there a couple weeks, so I was like doing basic graphic design. And
Was this in North Carolina?
yeah, it was in Wilmington. Okay. Yeah, and I was doing copywriting and stuff. They're like, Darren, we would like to start delivering all this training stuff through company intranets.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
very 1996. And so they were like, can you learn how to build websites? And so I did. And like I literally went out and bought, the guide to HTML and opened up Notepad and started writing HTML.
Yeah.
And it turns out that was one of the bigger decisions I made in my life, because then we moved to Knoxville because I wanted to do my PhD in the English department here. And so I was essentially a full-time grad student for the first 2 years during my coursework. I was teaching, English 101 and stuff, doing research fellowships and stuff. But then Joanna had been working crap jobs, and she wanted to go back to school at UT. And so I got a tech job at UT.
Okay.
And eventually, like, my dissertation, I got kind of lost in the wilderness there a little bit, and eventually threw away my half-written dissertation and took a job as the lead web designer at UT.
Okay.
And did that for a couple of years, and then moved over into a slightly different role. But the point of the story is, like, so I had these, for the longest time, I thought, like, if you had asked me what I do, I would have said, oh, I'm a graduate student, I'm writing a dissertation, while I was making all my income from building websites and graphic design and stuff. Yeah. And then in 2006, I was like, it snapped. And I was just like, okay, no, this is actually what I do. And I'm going to sort of flip them. So the way I always describe it is, like, I have my vocation, which is my job, which I enjoy and I think I'm pretty good at, and I manage technology projects and stuff. And then I have my avocation, which is the stuff that is also work. It's labor.
Yeah.
And it's something that I'm good at and take a lot of pride in, but it's not what I do to pay the bills.
Right.
And if you make your passion your avocation, then you have all this freedom.
Yeah.
Like, because you only, like, I've never written something that I didn't want to write.
Okay.
As opposed to a lot of my friends who are, God bless them, are hustling, trying to make it as freelancers, and they just have to pay bills, and so they'll do all kinds of criticism.
I worked for myself for 6.5 years, and one of my biggest clients was a basement waterproofing company.
Yeah, of course.
They paid my mortgage for probably 4 of those years.
Yeah.
Like, it was nuts.
Yeah.
And it was ads still in magazines
Sure.
and newspapers, takeaways, all that stuff. And I would do illustrations for them, and they're like, oh my God, this is really good. I was like, yeah, it doesn't all have to look like crap, man. It can look good. Like, it can look good, man.
Yeah. So anyway, like, in the early 2000s, when I was kind of lost in dissertation land, I was getting really bored with academic style of writing. I felt like I was losing my interest. I was never good at. I was never well read enough to, like, stand up to the academic standards.
Yeah.
You know, I maybe that's not true. Maybe it was just insecurity. But, like, I always felt like I was behind and struggling. So anyway, in like 2001, I started my own website.
Okay.
As a playground for playing with HTML and graphic design and CSS, all that stuff I was like learning for the first time. And then I figured this will also be a place where I can just play with writing. And so my plan was to be like a film studies and 20th century American literature guy. And I just started writing about movies for fun. And then my website ended up, it's like a weird claim to fame, but, like, my website was one of the first blogs focused on world cinema and contemporary art cinema.
Website?
It's called Long Pauses, longpauses.com. Still there as, like, an archive. Yeah, really what happened was, since I was one of the first people doing that kind of writing online, I met the other, like, early adopters of online film criticism, many of whom have since gone on to become editors of important journals or programmers at, like, really major film festivals.
Yeah.
And so I totally unintentionally built this really good professional network in the film world.
Yeah.
And so once I threw away my dissertation, I was just like, okay, I'm just going to start writing. I'm going to spend lunch breaks and evenings. I'm going to writing, and I'm going to start taking vacation time and going to film festivals.
Yeah.
And so that's where all of that started.
Man. Okay. So, and you, let's see, if it was that time, that was also a weird time for film festivals, wasn't it? Because, like, because you had all that independent film of the 90s, and then late 90s, it feels like early 2000s is all the, I'm going to pull a name. Somebody like Harrison Ford would do an independent film for scale, but then that, like, ratcheted up what Sundance became. then all of a sudden, like, major brands started coming in. I am a. I hope you don't throw anything at me.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to. I'm a massive Kevin Smith fan.
Okay.
And everything that he puts out, I feel like I have learned all of this stuff in film in this time. I've been him talking about, when we went like for Clerks, it was totally different than when we went back for Chasing Amy or Dogma.
Yeah.
And how it seems like celebrity had kind of taken over a little bit more at that point. But were you finding other ones that were smaller that felt a little bit more, I don't want to say homegrown, but like authentic, I guess is the way.
Yeah, I mean, my thing was like my main interest has been like contemporary world cinema.
Okay.
And so I started going to Toronto every September in 2004, which TIFF has changed so much in the 20 years since I first went, mostly for the worse. I think almost everyone would agree.
I hate to hear that because that and Sundance just to go are on like bucket lists for me.
I would still 100% encourage people to go to Toronto. It's just it's so much more expensive, and it's anyway. We could get into like the current economics of film festivals if you're interested. But so I started going to and I'm glad I started going in that era because for like the next 8 years or so, it's a great era of contemporary world cinema. I don't know if these names will mean much to you or folks listening, but like for world cinema people, like the fact that every year when I'd go to Toronto, there would probably be a new film by, Godard, but also like Claire Denis and Ho Xiaoxian and Wong Kar-wai and Abbas Kiarostami and all the great sort of world filmmakers who made their careers in the 90s were like getting into their prime, and there was still money available to them to make the movies that they wanted to make.
I'm just looking up a fact that I found the other day.
Yeah.
Sorry. But,
no worries.
Yeah.
But then so 2008, the world economy sort of collapsed, and over the next few years, the big transition to digital projection, digital filmmaking, digital distribution, just gutted all of the traditional financing models. So, like, I wrote an article about Claire Denis once that sort of dug into this a little bit, but like, I don't know, to use Denis as an example, like if you don't know who Claire Denis is, she's like this great French filmmaker. I think she's my favorite filmmaker of the last 30 years. And if you look at her first like 8 films, on average, they had 3 producers and production companies attached to them. Yeah. And since 2008 or so, probably since Bastards, maybe White Material, like there have been 20. Yeah, they're everybody's so and it affects. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. Like it affects the movies themselves. Where like Claire Denis, one of my favorite films of all times, it's called 35 Shots of Rum. It's just this sweet movie about a father who's a widower whose daughter is getting ready to marry and leave the house. There's this weird scene where the father and daughter get in a van and they go to Germany for a scene.
Okay.
And it's like, then you look at the credits at the end and you see I forget where they go, Munich or can't remember what city they visit. But then you see that she got probably $50,000 or something like that from the film development office in that city. Yeah. And so they had to shoot at least one scene there. Right. And so like once you become aware of this, you can start seeing this in co-productions.
I'm trying to remember if it was one of the Mission Impossible films or one of those films where they got a shit ton of money from like, is it China or Japan? I think it's Japan. Yeah. And they had to shoot like a big part of it there. And it was, or the film was, they were trying to make it big there. So they're like, we'll go and shoot here. The first film I remember noticing the crazy amount of producers on the front end was Crash. Crash had like 10 producers. And it just kept going. I was like, are we going to start the film? Like,
Yeah.
what the hell is going on? Like, it just kept, and every one of them had to have like a 20 to 30 second animation of their, I was like, what in the hell? And then the movie starts and it lists them all again. I was like, what the fuck? What's happening?
Yeah,
like, I know that's not a great
I've just started
example,
watching.
but
Excuse me. I've just started watching movies for the next Film Fest Knox.
yeah.
And I can't even remember which movie it was now, but it was a first film, a small independent American regional film, and it had 31 producers attached to it. I was just like, what? How does this?
So this is what I was looking up. I've got two friends of mine that are massive film nerds.
Yeah.
In fact, she went to school for film. So every once in a while we'll share stuff. So I can't remember if I mentioned it. So I would show films at the Central Collective.
Okay.
For years.
Yeah.
And I would show one big... Dale was the one who told me. She was like, show a big film too. Don't show all these weird, smaller films. And I would try to program around like the time... but I would always show a big film and a small film. Mm-hmm. And I've met these two people, Brent and Megan Waugh, through that. And we'll share movie things. We'll go to movies. But there's an account called Color Palette Cinema that I love. Uh-huh. And they posted up about Paris, Texas. I was like, man, I've not seen that film in a while. I need to rewatch that. And I looked up a fact and it said Allison Anders worked as a production assistant. Yeah. And Claire Denis worked as the assistant director. I was like, how did I miss that until now?
She worked on Jim Jarmusch's, the one with, I think she worked on the one with, no, it was the one with Tom Waits.
I think he's in like 3 of them.
Yeah,
Dead Man, or I think he's in Dead Man, but Stranger Than Paradise. No, that's his first one. Down by Law.
Down by Law, yeah. The one with Benicio del Toro and
they're in the jail.
Yeah. I think it was that one that she worked on.
I think isn't it Down by Law? I think it's Down by Law.
Yeah, she started off as, she went to like the finest film school in France and then did a lot of work with him. She was 44 when she made Chocolat, her first feature.
Really?
Yeah, she was older.
I also maybe didn't know that Chocolat was her first feature. I thought she did stuff before that, but
yeah.
That's crazy.
Not the Johnny Depp one.
No.
It's another Chocolat. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that was Michael Hallstrom or something, I think, did that one. Good Lord.
Yeah.
I've not had enough coffee today.
No, it's all right. I always have to clarify that.
Yeah. And I mix Jarmusch. I think the first time I saw him, I love Jonathan Demme. And I love Something Wild.
Yeah.
I've seen that film also. That's one of those that I would show. I was like, I don't think a lot of people know about this film. And Jonathan Demme is one of those, his oeuvre or whatever is so weird and varied. To go from like Something Wild to Silence of the Lambs to the Stop Making Sense to all, it's just all so weird.
And he also made really small little, he made this great little documentary about his cousin Bobby, his cousin who was a priest. Like that guy just chased his interests. And
still, the fact that is Ray Liotta's first film is kind of nuts. And he is terrifying in that film. Like, oh God, I love that film so much.
Yeah.
I have a favorites playlist on YouTube that it's just random stuff like music videos or whatever. And there's a scene in that film that is still, I was like, this isn't laugh out loud funny, but this is still one of my favorite scenes in a movie. It's where Jeff Daniels goes into a gas station and it's after he left and he still has the name tag. And it's just the interaction with him and the gas station attendant. Yeah. I was like, this is just pure comedy that it's not like ha, 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 ha. But this is a brilliant scene in a film that I don't even know if that dude is an actor. The gas station attendant dude. Like, I don't know what it is.
I shouldn't admit this in front of a microphone, but like most of the big American filmmakers of the 70s don't really mean that much to me personally. Really? But Demme I love. Yeah. Demme and Lynch and Hal Ashby.
Lynch.
And Alan Pakula. Like those are the ones that mean a lot to me more than Scorsese and all the big names. We don't need to get into that.
No, I struggle because
I'm just happy to hear you say that you're a Demme fan.
No, here's the thing. I don't think anybody deserves a pass.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody before the films even come out, she was like, well, this is going to be brilliant. No, it's not.
Yeah.
Could not. I'm not a Tarantino fan.
Yeah.
The only Tarantino that I really like is Jackie Brown. I like Jackie Brown. I like Inglourious Bastards a lot.
Okay.
And I like Reservoir Dogs, the more I say it. But it's just, I think a lot of his, I was like, I know too many of the films that he's stealing from, and it bothers the show.
Yeah.
But Jackie Brown, man, I love that he hired 2 leads that were older.
Yeah.
And Robert Forster, I love Robert Forster in that film. And I love Pam Grier in that film. Like
the way I think about Jodie now is like, sort of go with me on this idea.
Yeah.
Like, if you could take a director's filmography and personify it, like not Quentin Tarantino, but a personification of Quentin Tarantino's movies.
Yeah.
So like, let's say you're at a I don't know, a little like a little party or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's Quentin Tarantino, the personification of Tarantino's movies, and here's Scorsese, and here's like, they're just people I'm more interested in talking to.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm just not that interested in Quentin Tarantino's view of the world.
No.
So it's clearly one of the great filmmakers. Scorsese, clearly one of the great filmmakers. But I'm just not that, I don't know. There's too little time to watch movies, and like, I just don't want to spend time with people who don't see the world the same way
I'm thinking of 2 things. I always do a finger if I remember. The ones I love After Hours.
Yeah.
I think After Hours, for me, is my favorite Scorsese film.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's a brilliant, one night only, coked out of his mind.
Yeah.
Right. I love that film. A lot of them, I'm just like, okay, I got it. I didn't like Killers of the Flower Moon that much. I didn't like The Irishman that much.
Yeah.
It's one of those, I get it, but also he doesn't deserve everything he deserves.
Yeah.
Everything Apocalypse Now is the other one. Every time I watch it, I'm like, it's amazing this film got made.
Yeah.
And how it got made is unbelievable. And all the stories about like Brando showing up overweight, all that stuff is like everything that factored into getting this film made is why I think it is perfect. Like it'll never be made again like that. The other funny thing is a buddy of mine one night sat there and smoked cigars and drank, and I was like, who has the best 3-movie run of all filmmakers? I think we ran through everybody, and the two of the ones I came down to that I don't think get enough credit are Rob Reiner and Penny Marshall. I think Rob Reiner has a run that is absolutely bonkers.
Yeah.
Because you go like Spinal Tap.
Princess Bride?
No, it was the John Cusack. It was the teenager film. I think that was after Spinal Tap was the first one.
Yeah.
And I actually think that's a really, for what it is.
Yeah, of course.
But then like Princess Bride. Now why am I blanking on all of them?
Yeah.
And then Penny Marshall, I think it's like a heartwarming thing of like, you have big, I'm going to have to look these up. This is going to drive me nuts. Rob Reiner, Penny Marshall, I think it ended up ending, it's
League of Her Own?
It's like Big Awakenings, League of Their Own.
Okay.
And I was like, that's also a very weird 3 film. I love it. A League of Their Own is one of those that if it's on, I just sit and watch it.
Yeah.
It's like a warm hug. Like Rob Reiner, it's gonna drive me nuts. Oh, that's what it. Spinal Tap. This is another one where it's a crazy difference of film. Spinal Tap, The Sure Thing.
The Sure Thing. I want my $2. Isn't that the one?
No, that's that's one of the other 2.
Okay.
The 2 that were made by Savage Steve Holland that I watched a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
Stand By Me, Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Misery, A Few Good Men.
Okay.
I was like, that's
good pop American
crazy
filmmaking.
Run.
Yeah.
That's a crazy run. After that, it goes off the rails, but Ghosts of Mississippi is good. After that, not so much. Big Awakenings, League of Their Own were the 3.
Yeah.
For Penny Marshall. Those are ones I was like, I know these are big, studio film. I think they deserve a lot more credit.
Yeah.
Because they're not talked about with Coppola or Scorsese or any of those. De Palma's another one that I think we started looking. It's like, man, he's got a lot of misses. Like what he's got that's great is great.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of misses in there.
He's another one that I wish I could be as enthusiastic about as other people are. I love Blowout. That one.
Yeah.
That one's probably my favorite.
And then Spielberg.
Yeah.
I've got written down. I've got a question for you later on, but Star Wars did not hit me. It hit me when I was a kid, and then I hit a point I was like, I don't really like
Well,
this.
I watched I needed something to watch on the treadmill, basically. And enough people were talking about Andor, the TV series.
I loved Andor.
Andor is so great.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no force in
Tony
it.
Gilroy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's and I just love that he's taking seriously like what would a rebellion look like?
Yeah.
From the working class all the way up to the top. So anyway, I got so into Andor, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna rewatch these movies. They're all bad. My takeaway is that all 9 of them are bad.
And the last 3 are terrible.
All of them are like I actually like when I went back and rewatched, I was shocked. The J.J. Abrams ones are dumb.
Yeah.
But they're more entertaining and competent
Yeah.
than the just anyway.
So
I'm just making enemies on this podcast.
Here's my hot take on that. When Disney bought Lucasfilm and said they were going to do 3 more, I had heard an interview with Vince Gilligan years ago about Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
And he said what we would do is all of our writers would get into a room and we would literally break story for 3 months before we started writing one script.
Yeah.
It's like, how the hell did they not do that with Star Wars?
Yeah.
It's so dumb. Like, why don't you figure out something that would be good across 3 films and would introduce new characters? I was like, who's running this ship? Like, what is... like, it's so dumb. Now I've lost my other one. I had another one. It's okay. Okay, so you're writing, you've got the blog.
Mm-hmm.
Here you go. Is there anybody who is a blank spot for you since you're so immersed in film? Like a director or anybody? For me, it's Tarkovsky. I've still never seen any of his films.
So I would have answered. Still, the answer is this is kind of an obscure answer, but Jean Eustache is a great French filmmaker. He was like a little bit younger than that first wave of French New Wave filmmakers. Yeah. His films have been hard to see outside of the major cities for a long time, but they just this month landed on Criterion Channel. They've all been restored. So I've watched his first 2 short films so far, and I'm looking forward to watching the rest. His most famous film is a feature called The Mother and the Whore.
Love it.
And so I'm looking forward to that. I mean, there are some big movies that I haven't watched, but at this point I don't feel any guilt about it. I've never seen Gone with the Wind. I don't feel compelled to watch Gone with the Wind. You know, so like when the Sight and Sound list of the 100 greatest films comes out again, I'm always going to be at like 96 or something because there are some movies on there that I just don't.
I'm at, I think, like 92.
Yeah.
And all the ones I'm missing, I guess it's another blind spot, are the Chaplin and Marx Brothers films.
Oh, yeah.
They're just, I was like, these are going to be homework for me.
Yeah.
That's what I call it because I try to watch all of the Oscar-nominated films. Yeah. And some of them are like, this is homework.
Yeah.
This is not fun. This is homework. This sucks.
I also had this thing. It's already sort of happened a couple times during our conversation, but there are movies that I know people love, and that I know I probably won't like
the A-Team.
And so I choose
John Wick.
And so I choose. I think I'd enjoy John Wick. But no, I'm actually thinking about things like, I'm gonna get the name wrong. All Things Everywhere. All at
Everywhere,
once.
Everything, Everywhere, all at once.
It's like I'm pretty sure I wouldn't like that movie, and so. But I have absolutely no interest in like critiquing anyone's taste. I love that movie came out and hit 18 to 24-year-olds in the way that like Reservoir Dogs did when I was in college. You know, like we need those weird art movies that speak directly to the weird art kids and get them interested in movies and get them buying movie tickets and all that stuff. But I do sometimes make the decision that I would just rather not watch a movie so that I can genuinely say like, no, I haven't seen that one.
Okay.
I would, Yeah.
So I'll get to this in a second, but I had somebody else on and we talked about, it was right at the end of the last decade.
Yeah.
So we said 2011 to 2020, and we did like our top film, what we thought was the best thing
fun.
we saw in that.
Yeah.
And I said, I think number 1 would be a 10, and number 2 would be like a 9.99999.
Uh-huh.
And number 10 is Jeff Nichols' Midnight Special.
Okay.
I love Jeff Nichols. I don't think Jeff Nichols has missed yet. I think all of his films have been brilliant. I'm a little nervous about Bike Riders because it keeps getting pushed back.
Okay.
And it's based on a photo book.
Yeah.
And I love Danny Lyon's photo book, but it's kind of like, I hope this is good.
Yeah.
I have faith in Jeff Nichols. Because everything he has made,
Yeah.
I've ended, especially like Take Shelter. I was just like, Jesus Christ. Like, I was just sitting here watching it at home because I don't think it was here in the theater for more than a week. I was like, this dude is, he needs to be making. And my hot take, have you seen Midnight Special?
I haven't.
Okay. I don't want to ruin it.
Yeah.
Because everybody I tell to watch that film, I was like, don't read anything. Don't look at anything. Because it looks like it's one certain film, and then 20 minutes in, it completely changes genres.
Okay.
And it's one of those films I love, like Frankenheimer's Ronin, because it just drops you into that world, and they don't hold your hand at all.
Yeah.
It just goes. It just goes. It doesn't. Is it Frankenheimer that did Ronin?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
And it just goes, and I love those types of movies, and some of them it took me watching them a few times to really kind of get into it. So that was number 1. Number 2 is Creed, because I love the Rocky films.
Yeah.
And I thought, same thing. I like Ryan Coogler. I was like, there's no way this film can be great. And seeing it in the theater, literally shaking at the end of the theater because it pulled so much emotion. Number 3 is this film. It's the Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, the newer trilogy.
Yeah.
This is the first Matt Reeves.
Uh-huh.
Because the first 30 minutes, there's not one line of dialogue. I was like, what balls to do this in a major studio motion picture?
Yeah.
I was like, I love that some people are going to see this going, I'm seeing a Planet of the Apes film.
Yeah.
And it's making them think more.
I haven't seen any of the new Planet of the Apes movies, but I wouldn't be surprised if I see the new one because my 11-year-old is very into the whole kaiju world.
Oh, yeah.
So we see all of the Kong movies, all the Godzilla movies when they come out. And we saw the trailer for that when we went to see Godzilla Kong a couple weeks ago. And she seemed intrigued.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised.
This one is good. It's a little bit more straight ahead. The first one, Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
The second one is very good. I didn't like the third one as much, but the new one looks really good.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. It's like, man, these are old pulp films, and they're turned into actually good films. I was like, I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah.
Did y'all see Godzilla -1?
Uh-huh.
I'm pissed that I missed it in the theater.
Yeah.
Like, and even when it came back for black and white, it was here for... The theaters are doing something weird in that it doesn't seem to be a set schedule. Because sometimes I will look and it'll be like, okay, well, I have time Monday and Tuesday. Oh, it's not playing Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah.
And it pisses me off because I was like, I sometimes don't have time to fit to their Cadillac problem.
It's so I don't have a whole lot of like inside information from that other than with Film Fest Knox, we're partnering with Regal.
Yeah.
And so I've gotten to know, her name's Debbie Penny, and she does the art house programming and West Coast programming for Regal. I think it's West Coast. And so I've gotten to talk to her a little bit about that. And, there are times when like I'll look at Downtown West and I'll be like, why is this movie only screening once a day?
Yeah.
At 11 a.m.
Yeah.
Like, I can't go out to that. And my assumption is that it's because Regal has arrangements with distributors where distributors will say, yeah, you can have this film, but you also have to give a 1-week run to this film.
Okay, gotcha.
I think that's what's happening because it feels obligatory to me when I see that they're only showing a film once a day. At 11 a.m. We also just have, like, probably 40% fewer screens in Knoxville than we did 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
There have been so many closures.
Hell, when I was in, I think, middle school and high school, there were 3 by Easttown Mall. There were 3 theaters.
Oh, wow.
There was one where Pep Boys is at the Home Depot. That turned into a dollar theater. There was one in the mall, and then there was the Carmack that got turned into an AMC.
Yeah.
There were 3 within a mile of my house that I could walk to in the summer.
Wow. Oh, that would be great.
I ended up seeing... Here's where you can make fun of me. Please make fun of me. I saw Encino Man like 25 times that summer. I saw Friday like 30 times. I love Friday.
Yeah.
That is such a great, fun movie. And because they were $1.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'd work at the ballpark at night and just go during the day. It's like, it's hot. I need to get out of the house. I'm going to walk. I'm going to go see Friday again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when we moved here in 98, there were 2 theaters on Cedar Bluff. There was the one where like Dick's Sporting Goods was. That was a movie theater. And the one on the other side of Lowe's, the one, that became Dick's.
And then the Dollar Theater down.
And then the Dollar Theater. And none of those screens are there now.
That one with Dick's, that was, I think they would serve food in there on some nights.
Really?
At one point. There's a website that I stumbled upon that has like photos and newspaper ads from all the old theaters.
Oh, yeah.
And there's one that was at the end of Fairmont that was like a little one screen.
Really?
3 seats on each side. And they've got photos inside. Now there's like a hair salon in there. I was like, that's nuts. Like,
well, I know Bennett Galleries, I think, on Kingston Pike was our 70 millimeter.
Oh, yeah. That was the shoot. So during the pandemic, I did these glassware for Print Shop Brewery. And one of his beers was called Neon Renaissance. So I did like a neon graveyard.
Yeah.
And I found a bunch of like old historic, and it was that theater.
Oh, wow.
That they, that I cribbed that. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
It's on that glass. Well, the thing about the Hands in Concrete that they're Bradley Reeves, who I assume he's trying to get somebody to just take that so it doesn't get smashed up and can't get any takers.
Yeah.
Seems like the McClung or the East Tennessee History Center.
Ingrid Bergman.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
it's insane.
Yep.
So how do you... Nolan films like Nolan used to be Fincher, but now Nolan seems to be the new version of the everything they do is great and they can do no wrong. So do you like either one of them?
I like Fincher a lot. I think, you were talking earlier about like great 3 film runs. I think, am I right that Zodiac, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and Social Network, maybe...
I think we're Social Network and Girl with the Dragon Tattoo flip.
Maybe, but I think he made those 3 in a row. I like all 3 of those films a lot.
See, I love Seven.
Yeah.
I saw someone, I'm going to maybe make fun of Jesse. I think he called it something like a stupid film. I was like, it's not stupid. That's the way that thing's shot and everything, the score, like, that's a damn good, like, I don't think it's stupid, man.
I have a friend who wrote a really good book about Fincher, and I was surprised when I read it to find Adam like really advocating for Seven as the perfect Fincher movie.
The Game, I would make a strong argument for The Game. I feel like The Game feels like a throwback, like 70s, like 3 Days of the Condor.
Yeah. I have this weird, I haven't figured out what to call the genre, but it's these movies that like move at a pace that I just find like really satisfying.
Yeah.
And Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is one of them. These are movies that I will watch any day of the week.
It was Zodiac, Social Network, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Okay.
God, the fact that the Social Network and Girl with Dragon Tattoo were within a year of one another is kind of...
Oh, that's right, because he met Rooney Mara with that opening scene, and I think she had to talk him into casting her for Dragon Tattoo.
There are two scenes in that, because before that movie came out, I sat right there and read all 3 of those books. Uh-huh. I was off for work, and I finished all 3 of those books that are not small books in like a week.
So just to say,
I
this was like 3 years ago. We rented a beach house in Gulf Shores, and the beach house had all 3 of those books. And I had become obsessed with the movie.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm just going to read this first one. And I did the same thing. I read all 3. Like, I was reading like 6 hours a day. They're not smart books, but God, they're compulsive. And I actually do think that there's something interesting going on in those. This is so not what I expected to be talking about. But there is something interesting going on about like Europe's and Western cultures, like refusal to deal with like racism and Nazi past and all this stuff, and just like the hiding abuse. I think those are more rich texts than maybe they get credit for.
Yeah. Read all 3 of those, watched all 3 of the foreign films on Netflix, and then went and saw that film and was horribly let down.
Oh, man.
Because I think I watched so much in that time, and I was so hot. Social Network was one of those that I think when I went and saw it in the theater, there are 2 films that I remember for sure seeing with a certain audience, with a college crowd, that I think it impacted the film, and that was the first Hangover. Seeing that with a bunch of college kids. Yeah. I walked out of there feeling like I was walking on cloud 9. I was like, that was stupid and so much fun.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I loved it. And then the other one's The Social Network, to where everybody walked out and you just heard like chitter chatter.
Yeah.
As everybody walked out. Like, it really impacted the film.
I saw The Hangover in Key West.
Yeah.
My wife and I had just been through like a really bad spell, not in our marriage, but just in our life. And we kind of escaped to Key West for the weekend or for a week. And we went and we watched The Hangover, and it was the same thing. It was like a Key West crowd. Yeah. I'm sure I've never laughed that hard. Yeah. In my life. Yeah. Nothing but good memories of that screening.
That film, because I had, God, this is going to sound like a humble brag, but I'd been working on a habitat house all day, and it was the middle of summer, and I felt miserable. Yeah. So I barely made it in the house. I hurt everywhere. Mm-hmm. And then I took a shower, and I was like, I have to get out of the house. Yeah. I went and saw that film, and it was just like, thank God I went and saw it with that crowd. Yeah. Because it was so good. The other funny one was, because I listened to this podcast called Blank Check. Mm-hmm. And it's too long, but I love it. Yeah. And they have been going through, now I'm going to blank on it. It's not Frankenheimer. Shoot, what is the guy's name? He did Predator, Die Hard. Oh,
McNaughton?
McTiernan. John McTiernan.
That's right.
And they were talking about, shoot. Man, my brain is not on today. The film he did with Pierce Brosnan and Rene Russo. There was a remake of the Steve McQueen film.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I can't remember the name.
That film. And I was seeing that film at Easttown Mall. And like 20 minutes into the film, they put up the lights. And they were like, we have a gas leak back here. Everyone needs to leave. They're like, here's a ticket. You can come see any film. So I came back that night, went to a smaller theater there, because that was in the big theater, and saw The Sixth Sense. Mm-hmm. And it was cold in the theater. Yeah. And I was sitting next to some grandma, and there was a point where she grabbed my arm. And I was like, again, perfect experience for seeing this movie. It's cold in the theater. It's all that. Okay, so do you have like a top 5 if you want to rattle off, or do you not think that way?
Top 5 movies?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, every cinephile's got like that list.
You're going to make me look very
They would
bad.
change. No, maybe not. Like, the ones I usually mention are, you mentioned Tarkovsky earlier. He was like, I keep his movie Mirror. Yeah. In my top, if you ask me that question, I mentioned that one a lot because it was a big one for me in my like early life as a cinephile. Yeah. Partly because like my early phases of like writing about cinema was also when I was like, I mentioned earlier that I grew up in a very evangelical world, and so I was sort of disassociating myself from that life and kind of mourning the loss of that life. And so there were a couple artists who work in sort of a religious language. Okay. Including Tarkovsky. Yeah. So that movie was big for me. I think if, the other way to ask, like if you asked like, you can only rescue one film from the burning building. Yeah. What will it be? I would probably choose Singing in the Rain because it's just like a perfect.
You're not going to like my next question.
Such a perfect holiday perfect movie. It's like, but then there's like I said, I love Claire Denis, and so either Beau Travail or 35 Shots of Rum. I love John Ford. I could put any number of John Ford movies on the list.
The aforementioned Quiet Man.
The Quiet Man is a great one.
Yeah.
The Wagon Master is my favorite of his westerns. What else do I usually mention? Of the last 10 years, I became weirdly obsessed with Carol, Todd Haynes' Carol, which I saw 6 times in the theater.
Holy crap.
Yeah, to the point where my 4-year-old at the time daughter was like, "Daddy, are you going to see Carol again?" I was like, yeah, I am. I'm going to go see Carol again.
You know what? That's one that has been in my hopper for a while to rewatch, because I saw it when it came out. I was like, man, I've got to watch this again sometime.
It doesn't work for a lot of people. I could.
Yeah.
To me, it's there are. I've seen it so many times. I taught it at UT in a class I was teaching, and it was like there's a few moments that I could pinpoint that aren't perfect. The rest of the movie to me is just like, I'm just shocked at how the filmmaking and the acting that they pulled it off. Yeah.
I think it came out around that time, and God, now I'm going to blank on his name. He makes Tom Ford.
Uh-huh.
I think it was his second film, not Quiet Man. The one with, the hell's bells, man? My brain. British actor. Bridget Jones' Diary, the King's Speech, Colin Firth.
Yeah.
The one with Colin Firth. I think they both came out at the same time, and that one, for some reason, hit you a little bit more.
Yeah.
Going in. Okay, so have you named 5? I think that's close to 5.
Yeah.
So my 5...
I'm sure I'm forgetting stuff too, but...
My number 1, I don't know why it's become shit on. Okay, maybe you can explain to me, why is this film shit on so much? It's on the end of its bell curve, and I don't understand why. Is Shawshank.
Okay.
I saw Shawshank on VHS with my parents a year after it came out.
I didn't know people shit on that.
Yes.
Okay.
And then there was a point when I was in college, Pellissippi, and I lived closer to Easttown Mall in East Knoxville. Yeah. And there was a point where I got out of class at like 11:30 and didn't have another class till 6, so I would drive home, and I would watch Shawshank almost every day. And it was like I found something new every time I watched it.
Yeah.
Something in the filmmaking and everything. Yeah, it gets shit on a lot now.
Huh.
I don't know why. One guy I know said it was, what was the term he used? Where it's trying to manipulative.
Okay.
I said every film is manipulative.
It probably does. It fall into like the magical Negro discussion too?
I haven't heard that part.
Oh wait, I'm actually thinking about Green Mile there for that one.
I love Green Mile too. That's one. Green Mile and Heat were 2 films I saw in the theater like 4 times. I was like, these are like 3-hour-long films.
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
These are like, I'm taking half a day to go see these films when they came out. That's one. Unforgiven.
Sure.
I think the last about 20 minutes of Unforgiven may be 20 of my favorite moments on film.
Yeah, I haven't seen that for so long.
When he's standing on the hill talking to just the dialogue and everything, to then riding into the town.
Yeah.
Gene Hackman is such a bastard in that film.
Is that the scene where he tells the kid, killing a man is a hell of a thing?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, you take away all he has and all he will ever have.
Yeah.
Just the dialogue between them is, oh, God.
Yeah.
12 Angry Men.
Okay.
I think 12 Angry Men. We read it as a stage play in middle school in class.
I remember doing that.
And then I can't remember if Dad had already shown me it or I went home and watched it. And it just stuck with me ever since then. When Harry Met Sally. I love how it's also like an hour and 25 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's rat-a-tat. Like, I love that. And then the last one is always Back to the Future. Because I think Back to the Future is just a perfect, big, fun summer film.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, there's all kinds of ones. Like, there was one guy had me on and asked me, what's the film I've seen the most? And this is one that you may get up and walk out. It's called Serendipity with John Cusack and Kate Beckinsale.
Okay.
It came out. It's a film set in New York, and it came out like October 2001.
Sure.
And it's just about I was like, the soundtrack is good. It's something I would put on the background and do other things
Yeah.
and watch it. It's just
Yeah.
a warm romantic comedy. And the one I always defend in the last few years is Tron Legacy. I think Tron Legacy is a beautiful film. It has one of the best scores I've ever heard, with Daft Punk and an orchestra.
Yeah.
Like, it's really good. And the one thing frustrates me about criticism is sometimes a film like that, I'll go back and read the criticism now that they had then. And I read the criticism on that. I was like, y'all are idiots. They're like, it's too dense. It doesn't make any sense. I was like, it could not be more clear what's happening in this movie.
Yeah.
What the hell are you talking about? Like, stuff like that. It's like, the visuals are great. The way it's shot is great. The music's great. I was like, it's also kind of a bare bones story about a father and a son.
Yeah.
And another son, spoiler alert. And but it's just one that gets, I think, unfairly crapped upon. And it's just like, it's great.
I turned on part of Tron, the original Tron, the other night, just because I'd heard somebody talking about, either I didn't know or I'd forgotten that it was all shot on black and white film and then colorized by hand.
Yep.
I believe that's right.
Yep.
And so I
think that's how they got the reflective stuff.
Like.
It's like reflective tape. That's how they got it to work. It is a slug.
I didn't watch the whole movie. I'd just forgotten what it looked like exactly. That was one that I definitely saw when it came out as a kid, and it was just, it blew my mind.
But it also has David Warner, which I loved. That film with him and Malcolm McDowell, where he plays Jack the Ripper.
Time After Time.
Time After Time. That I watched as a kid. I was just like, this film is, because I was reading like Wells and stuff at that point. I was like, this is great.
Well, another movie that, God bless my dad for taking me back to see again and again, was Time Bandits as a kid.
Dude. I think it's over there on Blu-ray.
That's such a weird movie. I remember my dad just being like, why are we what? That's so weird. But David Warner, just terrifying.
The daycare I went to would take us to movies.
Okay.
Like twice a week.
Yeah.
So that I ended up seeing Explorers that summer like 10 times, because it was like, well, we're showing Explorers again. So you're going to watch it again. They took us to see Time Bandits.
Wow.
And I was like, I think we are way too young to be watching Time Bandits. Like, holy shit. Like, but it's a kid's movie. But then you watch Neverending Story, and some of the stuff in that is like, why the hell would you let anyone under the age of 10 watch this movie? This is traumatic, man. This is bad. I think that's my 5.
Yeah.
Shawshank's the one, because I think there are films like, I'm pointing at the Laserdisc of 2001. I think 2001 Shawshank are films that I have a hard time watching because I feel like this can sound silly, mean too much to me. Like, that's what's pulled me off of the Tarkovsky films, is like, I need to like zone in when I'm watching this. I can't watch this passively. I need to be alert.
Yeah.
This is a heavier film. I need to.
For what it's worth, I'm not. Let me like free you of that burden, because I don't think it. Abbas Kiarostami, the Iranian director, was famous for saying like, I really don't care if people fall asleep during my movies as long as they're still thinking about the movie the next day. Yeah. And I think Tarkovsky's very much a vibe. So.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
Well, that same thing with another one like that is like In the Mood for Love. Like that's one that if I could watch it more, but I was like, but man, this is one that like I feel like I need to focus on. Yeah. The only one that may replace the
Pure Vibe, that movie.
Yeah. And it repeats so much.
Yeah.
The fifth one may be the original version of Shall We Dance? Shall We Dansu from the 90s. Okay. They got remade into a terrible Richard Gere, J-Lo, Susan Sarandon film. But that film, it's funny, it's heartfelt, and it talks about the experience of like a Japanese man and what he is expected in his culture. Yeah. And it's fucking great. And I think more people need this. That was when I showed it Central Collective, and I think no one showed up for that one. I was like, damn it, come on, this is great. This is an amazing film. Is there a film that everyone else seems to love and you don't like it?
Oh, there's probably a lot. Yeah, that's one of those where it's like, I mean, I can't believe the things I'm admitting today. I've never finished Heat.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
I've praising that film like
I know.
50 times.
No, like literally every friend I have in the film world, almost every would react just like you did.
Yeah.
What are you talking? Like, there was a couple years ago, I can't remember if it was in Toronto or the New York Film Festival, where they had just done a restoration, and I think they had a print, a brand new print, where Michael Mann was there afterwards talking about it, and my friends who went, like, they were levitating afterwards. This was the peak cinematic experience for them. And I mean, just within the last few weeks, I was like, I think it's back on Criterion or Netflix or somewhere.
Yeah.
It's right there for me every night. And I'm just like, something, again, like my cocktail party analogy of like, Michael Mann is not somebody who's like interest in the world, like the Venn diagram of our interests in the world just don't really intersect. I like the one film of his that I watched within the last year or two that I was surprised that I really liked was Public Enemies. I just thought it looked really cool. Again, that's how the Michael Mann heads like respond when I
think
say
it's because he shot digital, and there are times where it looks terrible.
No, I think it looks beautiful.
Oh,
like the weirdness of the digital.
Oh, okay.
is I'm not saying it looks like film or that it's convincing.
Yeah.
I like the Big Ears Festival that didn't happen in 2020. The thing that I was most excited about is a friend and I had programmed this whole series of like early standard definition features.
Yeah.
You know, like the best example of that is Inland Empire, where he shot on just commercial.
There are parts of Collateral that look terrible.
Yeah.
Because it's shot with lower SD cameras.
Yeah.
And even Miami Vice, too, where it just looks weird.
Yeah.
It just looks weird.
Yeah. And like my wish is always that, like, you know, Criterion just put out Inland Empire, and they did like, I don't know what it means to do a restoration of an SD, whatever.
Sitting right over there.
But like, what I wish they had also done was to scan a 35 millimeter print of that SD film. Yeah. Because I remember going to the theaters and seeing that stuff, or even just in the last couple of years ago, there's a great festival in Rotterdam in the Netherlands every January, February, and they do really eclectic programming along with the new films. And so I watched, it was actually a movie we were planning to show at Big Ears called Down There by Chantal Akerman.
Okay.
Which was shot when she was living in, I think she was living in Jerusalem, maybe. But she shot it with a little commercial SD camera in her apartment, rear window style, like in a way. And I saw it on this massive screen. It was a 35 millimeter print of this SD film blown up, and the pixelation mixed with 35 millimeter grain to me is just like one of the most beautiful things we've ever come up with. And so I wish there were more opportunities to see that.
I was looking up, I think this was Mike Figgis's Time Code. I think may have been an SD.
That's another
film.
one. Yep.
That I think some of 28 Days Later too is shot
very famously. Yep.
In that weird,
yeah. I love those movies.
I will tell you one that was shot kind of like that, but a little bit later, that I saw in the theater. That the minute I stepped out of the theater, I was like, this is one of my favorite films. Is Once.
Oh, okay.
That it's kind of shot with HD cameras and the early HD cameras, and I just remember walking out of that film going, good Jesus, like, it hit me like a ton of bricks.
Well, you were talking about earlier about seeing movies at Downtown West. Yeah. I remember seeing Godard's In Praise of Love at Downtown West. Okay. Which was, I think half of it was shot on film. It was definitely projected on film in 2002 or whenever that was. And, but there's a moment where it cuts from black and white film, just this beautiful standard, you know, like classic Godard image. I think it's an image of a book. And then it cuts to this super saturated SD image. And it's like, I joke, like that's when the 21st century started for me, was like, with that cut, it felt revolutionary to me. It's so exciting. Still, I love that movie.
I was trying to look. There was a point where the Bijou was doing very interesting programming. Okay. Like they showed Blue Velvet and Eraserhead. Oh. And then they showed Breathless and is it Band of Outsiders? Does
Uh-huh.
that go dark? Yeah.
Yeah.
They showed those two together.
Okay.
Then they showed like Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
And it was funny because it was me and a bunch of college kids
Yeah.
watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I watched a kid like talking shit to his girlfriend about like, I'll take care of you during the scary thing and all that. And I'm sitting behind them.
Yeah.
And then one of the jump scares happens, and he pushed back so hard it hit my knee, and I reached up to smack him. I was like, "Hey, whatever you do, you're gonna protect. You ain't gonna protect shit, man."
That's great.
But yeah, the Blue Velvet Eraserhead. Everybody was there. They did the Big Lebowski too, and it was sold out.
Yeah.
But they did the Blue Velvet Eraserhead. I'm pretty sure it was Blue Velvet first, and almost everyone left. And I sat there and watched Eraserhead, and I was like, I think this is the last time I need to see this film.
Yeah.
This is like the third time I've seen this film. I think I'm good.
Yeah.
Like here on out. Like I don't need to see this film ever again.
Yeah.
I was like, I love him, but Twin Peaks is one like every 2 years I rewatch it from the beginning.
Even
And
the bad episodes.
it's so weird. Over time, I used to argue. I was like, well, the end of season 2 is good because they came back.
Oh
and
yeah. No, that last episode's amazing.
but then this last time I watched it, I was like, it may just be the last episode. It may not be the last 4.
I don't know if I still have it, but at one point I had a list of like if you just want to do a refresh of Twin Peaks, these are the 11 episodes to watch or something, and you can mix it.
The Return, I watched it during the pandemic in like 3 days.
Yeah.
And it was just like, Jesus, man, I can't believe he did this. Like, It was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
But yeah, Eraserhead, I'm good. I don't ever need to see that again. And even Mulholland Drive feels hard to watch.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what it is. It just feels hard to watch. I think it's sad. It's just a lot of it is so sad.
My standard line on Lynch is that's his superpower.
Yeah.
Is he understands that violence leads to grief.
Yeah.
Like, and he makes it impossible to skip the grief part.
Yeah.
Like, you have to really feel sorrow.
Yeah.
When there's violence, and that's why more than anything, that's why he's meaningful to me.
Yeah.
I still love. I think Blue Velvet is like the greatest American film of 50 years. I think that movie's just about perfect.
The one that my buddy and I would always argue about, he hated Lost Highway.
I don't like it. I don't like Lost Highway. Well, Lost Highway's okay.
I think you said vibes. I think it's a vibes film for me.
Yeah.
I think it's something that it feels like it's in chunks.
Yeah.
Like I will watch, it's a very dark, like sinister film.
Yeah.
But there's something, I used to watch it and Unforgiven. Like the first time I saw Unforgiven and Lost Highway were around the same time for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And I kept rewatching the both of them about the same time. And I don't know what it was about Lost Highway, but it's one that it's like, I don't know. And he was like, no, he turns into a kid. That's stupid. I was like, not everything has to make sense. How many Lynch films have you seen, man? I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
Blue Velvet's another one that it's like, when I watch it, I want to watch it. I don't want to think about anything else. I want to watch it. Yeah. For me, Singing in the Rain is the one that I do not like.
That's fine.
I saw An American in Paris before I saw Singing in the Rain, and I loved An American in Paris. Mm-hmm. And then when I saw Singing in the Rain, and everybody talks about it, and I'm like, it's just, I saw Gone with the Wind once at the Tennessee Theater. I was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, but I never need to see that ever again. Ever again. But Singing in the Rain is the one. I was like, every once in a while I'll be like, I need to try this again. But
yeah. If Gene Kelly doesn't work for you, it would be hard to.
Not big musicals person. Like Once is my favorite musical, and it's not even really a musical.
Yeah.
So how do you fall on like modern? You mentioned musicals earlier. More modern musicals.
Like, I'm trying to think.
La La Land. No,
these are these. A lot of these movies fall into that category of like probably not my thing.
Yeah,
and so I haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't like the opening 20 minutes. I think it's. Have you seen The Umbrellas of Cherbourg?
Mm-hmm.
So I love that movie.
Yeah.
Uh,
You asked me about my top 5 films. Another one in the running is always Young Girls of Rochefort.
oh yeah.
Also by Jacques Demy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The color, like it kind of fried my brain a little
Yeah.
bit the first time I watched it. I was like,
Yeah.
how are we still getting films that can't do this?
Yeah.
Like, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Like, that's nuts.
Yeah. I got to interview, spend a good part of a day with a French filmmaker a couple years ago named Philippe Garel. He was also a little bit younger than Godard and Truffaut,
Yeah.
like maybe 10 years. He's still making films. And he's always worked very independently and penny pinching. Like he would literally go to the shoots of friends of his who had bigger budgets, and he would collect their scraps of film so that he could reuse it or use it.
Yeah.
But we were talking about like why do you switch back and forth between black and white and color films? And he said, I think about this all the time. He said, black and white is cheaper because not just because you don't have to worry as much about makeup or whatever,
Yeah.
but like you don't have to dress every room. You don't have to.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to worry as much about the costumes people are wearing. He said when you're working in color, he said when I'm working in color, color is important to me.
Yeah.
And so he was talking about what I learned from Godard was primary colors, red, yellow, and blue.
Mm-hmm.
And so like you go back and you watch like those early color Godard films, like A Woman is a Woman or whatever, his musical, and like just tons of color, explosive color. And then he said, and then from Demy, I learned about purple and green. And so like you watch Young Girls of Rochefort and it's just red, yellow, blue, purple, green, and pink, just exploding everywhere.
I was trying to think, one that I felt that way in a muted way, La Samurai.
Okay.
I was trying to look at his name, Demy. Or no, Melville.
Melville, yeah.
That one, it felt... There were times where it felt like a black and white film that was in color. Mm-hmm. It felt like the color was taken away so much.
Oh, yeah,
on that
desaturated,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, it was nuts.
Yeah.
God, you mentioned True. So, like, After Hours is my favorite Scorsese. My favorite Spielberg is actually Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah.
Because same thing. It's every time I watch it, I was like, I can't. This is his blank check. I can't believe he made this film.
Yeah.
Because it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. I'm also not a big Jaws fan. Jaws is not my bag. I think it's one of those. I grew up so much like you have to like this film. It's a great film. And then when I got older, I was like, I don't want to waste my time.
Yeah.
When I can watch Tron Legacy for the 50th. Easy one.
Uh-huh.
So one of the questions that I come up with, it's funny that you mentioned it, I was going to ask if you were into film scores. So then you go off to school.
Yeah.
So was that something as a kid? Did you pick up film scores on vinyl, or did you see a film where it really stood out to you?
Rear Window is another big one. I don't know if you remember, but like one of the neighbors is a composer.
Yeah.
So he's sitting at the piano, and at the end, it's been released, and there's music and stuff. I remember as a kid, a big one was The Black Hole.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Which has a fantastic score.
Yeah. Is that a Goldsmith?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
Or John Barry, maybe?
Oh, maybe.
I can't remember.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's a great score. But yeah, I was interested, and then a big one for me was we were talking about Peter Gabriel before we started.
Oh yeah,
started recording.
Fence.
No, Last
Birdie?
Temptation of Christ.
Oh,
Passion.
yeah.
That soundtrack was on constant play for me for like 2 years.
Okay.
That was a big one.
And is it something? Do you still like? Do you have playlists of your favorites, or?
I do have a playlist of it's like ambient and scores, and the other big thing that didn't happen in 2020 that I really wish would have is I mentioned Claire Denis earlier, favorite filmmaker, and she has worked for most of her career with Stuart Staples from Tindersticks.
Oh,
he had scored almost all of her films, and so we were going to bring Denis.
Oh, geez.
And Tindersticks. Tindersticks were set to perform. They were going to be playing their first U.S. show in years.
I was going to say, geez, yeah.
And so that somebody took a picture of me talking to Claire Denis like 5 weeks before Big Ears in Berlin. And that he happened to be standing there with his phone. And he took a picture, and it was like the exact moment where she was saying, "Yes, I will be coming."
Oh my
and
God.
then it didn't work out because of COVID.
I'm trying to look. I was like, how many? I know I've seen her. What's his name? Haneke? Michael
Haneke.
Still the film that I have hated the most in my life.
Okay.
It's an apocalypse.
Time of the Wolf.
Yes.
Is that right?
I've only turned off 2 films my entire life. One of them was Charles Bronson's Mr. Majestic.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Dad.
Yeah.
He loves that film. Sitting here watching it, I was like, I have to. This is a piece of shit.
Yeah.
I can't watch this
Yeah, yeah.
anymore. But the other one was Time of the Wolf.
Uh-huh.
Early Netflix.
Totally reasonable
DVD,
response.
and it hit a point to where they slashed a horse's throat, like
Yeah.
45 minutes in or something. And I think I literally looked at it. It was like, why am I watching this?
Yes.
Because there's like 10 minutes of blackness.
Yeah.
And I get it, but it's also like, no, man. No.
Yeah.
Come watch When Harry Met Sally again.
Guy's a bit of a sadist, I think.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I wanted to look up Claire Denis and what I have seen of hers. Because I know I've seen some, but I have probably not seen as much.
Yeah.
I think it's Friday Night. I think I actually saw that Downtown West.
Okay.
Uh,
High Life had Robert Pattinson in it. So that was probably her highest profile film
yeah.
in the West, but
I think Friday Night, maybe Beau
Travail.
Yeah, I think maybe that. Because that was right in the time when I was going to
Yeah.
Downtown West.
That was kind of her breakthrough.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen High Life. Oh, that's him and the kid. Right? I think.
Yeah, there's a kid, they're in space. High concept movie.
I remember the trailer, but
Yeah.
I don't think I ever saw it.
Yeah, wasn't a huge commercial or critical success, but I really dig that movie.
That is a dude that I actually respect.
Oh,
Him
yeah.
and Radcliffe, what they've done post their big
Yeah.
hits.
Yeah.
Like Swiss Army Man is still like one that's like.
No, I love those people who like could just go on being celebrities, but they clearly have an interest in making good movies. Kristen Stewart, Emma Stone, like I think one of the most interesting like film personalities for a period was George Clooney.
Yeah.
Like 15, 20 years ago, where he was making Solaris and all kind like he had this run where he was, I think, helping to produce and just get.
And he directed like Good German and.
I love Good Night and Good Luck.
Good Night,
Have you
Good
ever
Luck.
seen that?
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
fantastic movie.
That. Oh Brother Where Art Thou is one of those films that the first time I saw it, I did not like it.
Okay.
And every time I rewatched it, I liked it more and more.
Yeah.
And it was just. Coen Brothers, another one. My parents. We went to the theater to see Raising Arizona. And so I was 8 or 9 when I saw Raising Arizona.
Crazy.
Yeah, which is. There are still lines in that film that are not funny to anyone else.
Yeah.
The son, you got a panty on your head, and sometimes I gets the menstrual cramps real hard. Like to this day, not funny, but funny.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what it. They are ones that it's like, man, they are hit miss. Like
Yeah.
it's a very.
It's interesting now they've sort of broken up
Yeah.
as a team, and I always forget which is which.
Joel is the tall one who's married to Frances
Okay.
McDormand.
So
and
he makes-
Ethan is the more smaller nebbish.
He
one.
makes a hyper serious version of Hamlet.
Yeah.
First time out.
Yeah, I did not see.
And then that's Ethan. That's the
Ethan's the one who just made Drive Away
okay.
Dolls. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Ethan is making Drive Away Dolls.
Yeah.
So it's like interesting to see. Oh, okay. Now we see who was bringing which voice to all those movies they made together.
There's another one that I think Miller's Crossing is the one that everybody should see of theirs that nobody still talks about with Gabriel Byrne. Like it's such a great noir film.
Yeah.
I didn't like Blood Simple as much as everybody else did, but Good Lord. This is just random spitting. So you're back here. You choose to do the blog. I will always get us back on topic eventually. In hour 4. Okay. So you're doing the blog and you're going to film festivals, and you were part of public cinema at UT, or?
Yeah. So what happened was, so from like my first festival was 2004. I started getting press passes in like 2007, I think. So once I started covering festivals, I started getting to interview heroes, and meeting programmers at the festivals, and sort of like that sort of online professional network I'd been building through the blog then became like real friendships with people who are, publishers and stuff. And I don't think I've mentioned Paul Harrell yet. I don't know do you know Paul?
So I went to a few of the public cinema when it was at the KMA.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to a few of those.
Okay. So Paul Harrell is he's a professor in the cinema studies department at UT, and he's also an independent filmmaker. And Paul and I met like 20 years ago, and soon after we met, I started a little cinema club. I just bought a house out in Farragut that had a basement. And so I was able to put in a projector and a screen and stuff. And so we had inherited these old couches and chairs. So I started inviting people over for a little cinema club. And then Paul and I started, and his partner at the time, Ashley Maynor, we started like spitballing ideas for like a different kind of film festival in Knoxville. The Knoxville began as this, what was it called? The Scruffy, what was it?
So Keith, out in Oak Ridge, and then the first year he did it in Knoxville was partnering with Dogwood Arts, on the Knoxville Film Festival. So fun fact: in the 7-day shootout, I won 2 awards that year. Okay. For a documentary, I shot and did everything myself in 7 days.
Awesome.
And did not sleep. I was still working.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised there were not holes in the wall.
Oh, that's awesome.
Where I beat my head.
Yeah.
And at the last day when they were doing the award winners, I was walking in and Keith had just gotten out of his car and he looked at me. He's like, "You're Jody." I was like, "I am." He's like, "I don't know you. How do I not know you?"
Yeah.
I was like, "I don't know, man." Like, I don't know. It was so, I sat in the back. Nobody knew me. No one would talk to me.
Oh, that's cool.
Nobody clapped when my film, it was so weird.
Good for you for like that kind of just like ambition to try it.
I just bought a D7000. I've been shooting photos and film forever, and I was like, I hate to I'm gonna tell a truncated version of this story. You had 7 days.
Yeah.
The first night when you picked your genre, there were 25 teams, so there were 6 genres, and there were 4 people that got horror, 4 people that got drama, 4 people that got genres, and then there was 1 you can do whatever you want. So I hadn't written anything. I had no ideas.
Yeah.
And I found out later everybody else comes in with ideas.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that. I was being true to what it said you should do. So the first night I literally sat here on like a Wednesday night writing a script out. I was like, what if I did this? And I had an idea. Wings of Desire would also probably be in my top 10.
Okay.
And I was like, I had this idea about you had to include one landmark of Knoxville. And I was like, what if I shot on the Gay Street Bridge and, fog, and it would be this and this? I was like, how the hell am I going to get fog? What the hell am I thinking? I'm stupid.
Yeah.
Like that. I was like, put that away. And I wrote an idea that I still would eventually like to shoot. And then I started reaching out to friends, like, can we go shoot this on like Friday and Saturday? No. So it got to be like Friday morning. I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. I still got to do this. I said I would do it. I'm stubborn as shit. I had 2 friends who had a year earlier bought an Airstream and had just recently quit their jobs and were about to set across the country. So I was like, they're having their going away party tomorrow night. I'm going to shoot them working on I had been helping them work on their Airstream, like putting in the floor, the electrical. So I was like, I'm going to shoot just B-roll of them working on the Airstream, and then I'm going to interview them. Because I'd been working on magazines and websites interviewing people.
Yeah. Just
sat there with a plug-in on my phone and came up with a bunch of questions. like on Saturday night or Sunday, because Saturday night was the party. Shot footage of the party, and then Monday night cut it all together and found a temp track, sent it to a buddy who was supposed to do a score. He's like, I think that score's good. Just keep that. So, and then I submitted it, and I won Best Special Effects or Score, which I joked. I was like, well, it's because they think I had a crane because I'm tall. And I joked. But it was really for the score, which was just some freebie song.
Yeah.
And then I won second place overall.
Oh, nice.
And the people who voted had films in competition there, and I ended up getting to talk to two of them, and they were both like, we have never seen a documentary in a 7-day shootout. I was like, it was just time.
Yeah.
Like it just happened to happen. But it still is. I put up the little awards for like a year, and I was like, I'm done. I can't, I'm not going to coast on this. I'm not going to do anything. But I was there for that first year, and I got to see a lot of good film. Short Term 12 debuted there at that film festival.
Okay.
I think it was called the Knoxville Film Festival at that point with Dogwood Art. Sorry, I got us on a sidetrack. But yeah.
Yeah, Paul and I had some conversations with Dogwood Arts around that time. And we talked to Regal at the time too. And the timing just wasn't like Knoxville didn't need another festival. And Knoxville Film Festival wasn't the right fit for us. So what was it? The folks at the KMA Paul would have his student end of the semester screenings there. I don't know that you remember that auditorium that's no longer there. And they were like, hey, Paul, if you have other ideas for ways to use this space, we're just not getting much use out of it. And so he called me, and I'd been looking to buy a new projector anyway because we had moved from that, whatever. So I bought a projector, and the public cinema was just me and Paul and my projector. And so KMA offered us a space for free one Sunday afternoon a month or two Sunday afternoons a month. They probably would have given it to us
whenever,
anytime. Yeah. But we wanted to, the idea right from the start was we wanted to have 3 different strands of programming. So there was like international currents is what we called the KMA stuff. That was like just good new world cinema.
Yeah.
Sort of my wheelhouse. And then there was Made in the USA, which started off at Scruffy City Hall.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever went to... We showed the Hitchcock-Truffaut documentary there.
I'm remembering this. Yeah.
And then we would do what we called Flicker and Wow at the Pilot Light, which was experimental moving image art
films. I was
films.
there for a bunch of those.
So we showed lots of cool stuff. We started in 2015. It kind of died during COVID.
Yeah.
We did a couple screenings at Central Cinema once after those guys opened up that place. And then it's been kind of on the back burner ever since then. I felt like KMA was our home base. And so when they closed that auditorium, I kind of lost some of my enthusiasm for the whole thing. And we also just got sick of lugging a projector around. Got a little old. But we showed cool stuff. We had some cool experiences. Got to know a lot of the distributors in the U.S., like small distributors, because of that program. And so, like, I had wanted to show Albert Serra's The Death of Louis XIV. And so I was talking to the distributor. He's like, hey, by the way, Albert's going to be in Miami that week. He's a Spanish filmmaker. And he's like, if you guys find the money for a flight, I'm sure he'd come up.
Holy shit.
And so we did. Paul found some visiting filmmaker money at UT Cinema Studies. And so hung out with Albert Serra for a couple days, which was wild. But it also helped my relationships with other programmers. Like just yesterday, Paul and I had lunch and we were talking about, I don't know, I've taught one class in cinema studies at UT and we were proposing like a new one maybe next year of like looking at the film criticism and programming as two sides of the same coin, where in both cases you're sort of like advocating for a kind of cinema. It's like very taste based, you know. So anyway, public cinema happened that way. Ashley Capps noticed what we were doing. He would come to the screenings, and so that's how we got affiliated with Big Ears for a couple years. Got to do some really cool stuff with them.
I think the only problem I had with Big Ears is I saw a bunch of film screenings, but I also was like, man, I would always go and see a band play for half a set and then go see it.
Yeah.
Like
that's the problem.
In film screenings, it was like, holy hell, I'm in, and I'm in if I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm kind of stuck.
Yeah,
so.
we tried really hard to make it sort of once in a lifetime screenings in the same way that so many of those shows at Big Ears are once in a lifetime shows. And so we got to do some cool. I'm really grateful to Ashley for giving us that opportunity because we got to do some really cool stuff.
And then porting over to a Knoxville Film Festival.
Yeah. When Keith McDaniel and sort of decided that he was going to let Knoxville Film Festival go, one of the first people he told was Kurt Willis.
Yeah.
Do you know Kurt?
Yeah.
So Kurt.
God love Kurt. He remembers me 1 out of 100 times I see him. I was like, dude, come on, man.
He knows everybody.
I've met you 50 times.
Yeah, Kurt is the director of our local film office. And so he called, he's worked with Paul just in trying to get films made here.
Yeah.
Paul's films made. And so they've become pretty tight over the years. So he called us, frankly, before Keith had made his public announcement. And he was just like, hey, Keith's hanging up his hat. And he's very generously, I think, Keith was like, I'm stepping away and I'm taking my thumb off the scale. Like Keith was like, I'm curious to see who steps up and what happens next. And so Kurt reports up through Visit Knoxville.
Yeah.
And they have a good working relationship with Regal. And so all the partners have wanted to have a different kind of festival in Knoxville. And so we started meeting very quickly after that and pitched Film Fest Knox. Slightly different name.
Okay. I wrote it down.
Film Fest Knox, yeah.
I think I saw the step and repeat behind you, and maybe it was Knox was ending. It's
filmfestknox.com. The home of our new website.
So what is the thought behind it?
So Paul, the good thing about it taking so long for us to finally get a festival is we've had a lot of time to think about it. And we sort of went in. So I wrote an article for Filmmaker Magazine that sort of breaks down basically the argument of the article is if Film Fest Knox is successful, it's because we built good partnerships and set very clear strategic objectives right from the start. And so we knew, especially for the start, that it was going to be essentially a 3-day festival. Mm-hmm. We knew that we looked at Indie Memphis Film Festival and True False Festival in Columbia, Missouri as our models. Mm-hmm. True False started, I don't want to say, I know that it's been around maybe 20 years. I can't remember, but it grew out of Columbia is a town a lot like Knoxville. It's like a college town that had within a relatively conservative part of the country. And True False has focused on films that are what we call hybrid films. So they sort of blur the line between fiction and nonfiction.
Kind of like Ellen's or Lane's King Cole.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's a great example. And
good Lord.
King Cole.
Can't even say her name right.
Yeah.
Curran's going to kick my butt.
But so True False, because of the strength of the programming and the focused programming there, over the years, True False has become a tastemaker with that genre. And so we were like, America doesn't need, the film industry doesn't need another regional film festival. Regional meaning relatively small city festival that is just showing the same movies that every other regional festival is. And so we wanted to give it a focus. And so what we settled on pretty quickly is going back to your earlier comments about Sundance used to be this other thing before it grew up. I've never really talked about it in this way, but Film Fest Knox is kind of picking up the original idea of Sundance, which was Robert Redford wanted to celebrate regionally made films.
Yeah.
And so the centerpiece of Film Fest Knox is our American Regional Cinema Competition, where we go out and we find 6 films that were made outside of LA and New York that don't yet have distribution, and that we want to help. Like the way we describe it is we're looking for personal, ambitious regional filmmaking. Mm-hmm. So by personal, we mean we want it to have a voice that we haven't heard before. Like we don't want to see the same film again.
Okay.
You know, there's a kind of movie that's relatively easy to make when you're in your 20s.
Yeah.
And we're kind of tired of that movie.
Okay.
And so we want movies that have a unique voice, that are formally ambitious, and that have what we always call a sense of place. Like, so it didn't happen to be made in Austin or the eastern part of Oregon. Mm-hmm. Like, that location is essential to the voice of the film.
Okay.
So that's what we're looking for. That's what we're celebrating. And Regal has wanted to have a really good film festival in Knoxville for a long time, or a different kind. I don't want to make any sort of backhanded compliment to the old Knoxville Film Festival, but they had larger ambitions, and they're looking for, I almost said product. They're looking for films.
Content.
Content that's just as bad. They're looking for cinema to put in their theaters. And so we had been like, once Kurt and Paul and I came up with this angle, we're like, wouldn't it be cool if Regal would put the winning film in their theaters?
Yeah.
We were scared to ask. And then at the next meeting, when we pitched the idea, the folks from Regal were like, well, we like that idea. And what would you think if we put the winning film in our theaters? And we were like, oh,
you're each pinching one another under the table.
Yeah,
going, shut up.
Like our eyes are darting. We're like, yeah, really? Would you really be willing? Yeah, but we were thrilled. And so I was nervous that we'd be able to find 6 great films for our first festival last November, and I really loved all 6 films we showed. And the film that won is called Peak Season. They have just announced their distribution deal, and they're working right now with Regal to basically, Regal not only said we'll show your films, but like we'll give it an Oscar qualifying run, which means at least 1 week in at least 10 of the top 50 markets in the States. So it's kind of a big deal. Like, for it, you know, we love these movies. Most of them go straight to VOD. Yeah. And so it's great that that Peak Season, those guys were great. It's great that they're going to get their film in theaters. Of the 6 films that we showed, 4 of them already have gotten distribution deals. Not because of our festival, but like that's the quality of the film that we found. And one of them, the 5th one, is being distributed through Amazon and VOD, and then the 6th one I'm pretty sure will get picked up.
Okay.
Soon. So so like the idea is like we wanted to have that regional cinema emphasis. We wanted to keep the voice of public cinema programming. So we also have an international currents program. So we showed 8 films in November, 2 shorts, 6 features that were like, one of the reasons we have it in November is I wanted to have some space between the New York Film Festival in October and November so that those films that are having their U.S. premieres in New York in October, I think 5 of the 6 features we showed in November were local premieres after having the New York premiere in October. And then speaking to your experience of the 7-day shootout,
Yeah.
we knew how important that was to the local filmmaking community.
Yeah.
And so we sort of came up with our take on that idea, which is called the elevator pitch.
Okay.
Have you heard about this at all? No worries if not.
I didn't know about this. This was happening until it was too late.
Yeah.
I actually, pre-pandemic, early pandemic, did a lot of work for Visit Knoxville and
Okay.
promotion and social media and getting more. So when this came around, I was like, this is something I would have liked to have known about. Felt like there wasn't, no offense,
No.
there wasn't not enough promotion.
There
I was
wasn't,
like,
yeah.
I am your audience for this.
Yeah, no, for
And
sure.
I keep abreast of what's going on in my
Yeah.
city. And somehow all of this.
We heard that a lot, and
Yeah.
and clearly we didn't set out to not promote it,
Right.
but I can honestly say that like the turnout was not one of our year one strategic objectives.
Yeah.
And all credit to Visit Knoxville for footing the bill and being willing to think of this as a long-term project.
Yeah.
This year, audience building is a big part of our plan, including we're starting a new, in the old public cinema mode, we're starting a new screening series next month
Okay.
at the
Good.
Regal downtown.
Okay.
That will be free, just like the public cinema was. It's
Good.
going to be once a month, and the goal there is to start audience building.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
So, but anyway, the elevator pitch, all right, so this will be closest I come to sort of criticizing the old model is, Paul is a filmmaker and a teacher of film, and Kurt's job is basically to attract feature productions
Right.
to Knoxville and to bring that production money to Knoxville. And so our frustration with the old 7-day shootout model was that it was a come and go thing. It was just like, yeah, it's fun for the local community. It's a good community building exercise.
It's a lot of people who are having to shoot murder porn for True TV to be able to do something that is creative and fun.
Yep. And so
I will say it. That's
yeah.
what it is.
And so when the films have to be made in 7 days,
Yeah.
some of those films were better than they should have been considering the constraints.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are just like fun projects
Yeah.
that don't, in the long term, you can't go like, oh, we did the 7-day shootout and then I became a great filmmaker and
Yeah.
then I went on to become a feature. So we were like, how can we have something that's clearly the legacy of the old 7-day shootouts,
Yeah.
but that leads our local filmmaking community toward a next step? And so the elevator pitch, the idea is you make a 7-minute movie and you do a 1-minute pitch, elevate 8.
Okay.
So elevator. So like the idea is you're doing your 1-minute elevator pitch. Hey, I'm
Yeah.
making a movie. I've got 1 minute to explain what it is. And then the 7-minute film you make is a proof of concept for a feature.
That it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't.
Okay.
A lot of people made things that worked as 7-minute short films, but sometimes we were just like, hey, shoot the scene that you're in your feature that
Right.
you're most excited about, or that is most exemplary of what the feature will be.
Yeah.
And then, so I think we had 25 or 30 teams sign up for it,
Holy
and
crap.
then maybe 20 finished the project.
I think the year I did it, like I said, it was 25 people. I think 21 actually
Yeah,
succeeded.
it's a big
Yeah.
task to take on, and then we also eliminated the 7-day window. We're just like, no, take this seriously. Do something
Yeah.
good. Make a real pitch for feature film, and then we brought in a jury of actual real professionals to kind of go, and by professionals I mean people in real film production,
Yeah.
who were then judging it not just on the quality of the work, but like the quality of the pitch, the quality of the concept. And then the 3 winning teams have, in the 5 months since then, had regular mentoring from Paul Harrell, and and they're getting script notes from like real producers.
Nice.
They're going through the process of learning. Like the last one was like, how do you do your pitch deck? How do you write? How do you turn a 10-page treatment into a 90-page script? Like
Yeah.
we're genuinely mentoring people toward a feature. So the 3 teams are, they've got real potential there to make a feature film. And so
That's awesome.
we're trying everything we can to like use the festival as like to raise the bar. And I think I haven't been as involved in that part. Like my function as artistic director is I'm choosing most of the other films.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't been as involved with the elevator pitch, but like my sense is that there was a little bit of blowback at first when we pitched the changes and
Yeah.
to Keith's old model. But then I heard from a number of people who said like, thanks for like raising the bar.
Yeah.
Like they felt pressure to do better work, which we wanted.
Okay. Yeah, that don't know how to say this. I was an outsider. I felt like an outsider beginning, middle, and end of that process.
Okay.
The people who were very nice to me were the judges for the actual 7-day shootout.
Yeah.
Who were people from other places.
Yeah.
They were the people who were very, and that's no slight against anybody local.
No.
But it was just like, I don't work at Jupiter. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean you can't talk to me.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
This
No,
is
it's
silly. This is silly.
I appreciate you saying that, because one of the goals, especially like with this coming series that we're going to start in May, is Paul and I did a lot of work with the public cinema to build, I think, a little bit of a community of cinephiles who are like, oh, wow, I've never heard of this director. It's free. Paul and Darren picked it. It's probably worth my time.
Yeah.
So there's that community. And then there's the local filmmaking community that I had no contact with until this festival. And there's zero reason for there to be division.
Yeah.
Not even division. Like, it's not, division implies that there's like, people are choosing to not combine. It's more like, no, this was happening. Nobody has ever made an attempt to go like, so one of the things we're doing with the series and with the festival is everything that I'm programming for the series, even if like in June, we're going to be showing the latest film by Hong Sang-soo, who's a Korean, great, one of the most decorated, world cinema directors right now.
Don't look him up.
But he makes tiny movies. And so like, I want everything we show to be an example of the kind of like, you don't have a big budget, you're working in East Tennessee, you don't have to make the same movie about, bored 20-year-olds. Like, be ambitious. Like, everything I show, I want to be a model to the filmmakers, local filmmakers who are coming, and I want it to be like good world cinema or good cinema.
That film that was made here, the one with Hal Holbrook, it's made here 10 years ago.
Okay.
15 years ago.
Yeah.
I think it may have been his last film. How do you spell that guy's name? Hong Sang-soo.
Oh, Hong, Hong.
Okay.
And then new word, Song, Sangsoo.
Okay. I heard Zong. There we go. He was another one. It's like, have I seen anything he has done? I do not think so.
Yeah.
Shit, now I'm losing track. I need to focus.
Yeah.
I need to... Hal Holbrook, last film he did. I'm trying to remember who it was made. It was made... I bought it at a Pilot gas station. like on DVD. It was actually sitting on the countertop, so I assume whoever was involved with it, like that's kind of how it got made. Well, maybe it's older than I thought it was. That Evening Sun is what it was
I was going to
called.
say, like, I felt like Evening was in the title.
Yeah, That
but
Evening Sun. Had Ray McKinnon, who I really like. Do you know him? The actor, director. He's won an Oscar for The Accountant. He's someone, every time he pops up in a film, was like, I like that guy a lot. He's great in everything he's in. Great Southern actor. I love seeing actual Southern actors, not British people with a horrible accent. That would be a good, that's a regional example of where, like, Tennessee is.
Yeah.
Okay, Hong San-soo, Hell's Bells.
Yeah.
I've lost it.
Yeah.
Nope, it's gone.
Yeah. So anyway,
But okay, so it's more involved. It's not a big 1 year event. It's going to start doing monthly programming, and you're shepherding people who are involved in this Elevate program too.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have other plans in the works that.
Are there thoughts for like actual like premieres? In working does it help to work in tandem with Regal, or do you feel like you've gotten more out of the stuff you've built since you started doing this? Does that make sense? Does Regal add a layer of, I hate to say legitimacy?
Yeah.
I don't mean that in a slanderous way. I just mean they're a massive company.
Well, I mean, with the first year, last year, this time a year ago, I was reaching out to filmmakers and I was basically saying, hey, hi, we've never run a film festival before, but we're going to start one this fall, and we would really like you not only to show your film, but to fly here. We'll pay for your trip and stuff. Yeah. And so to say, Regal is our presenting sponsor, and not only that, but if you win this competition, Regal will be showing your film. That 100%. Like, I asked them once all the crews, the filmmaking teams showed up in Knoxville. I was like, why did you say yes to the offer? And they're like, well, and this was part of our original conversation with Visit Knoxville, is we wanted to budget to bring 2 people per film, because usually it's just the filmmaker, the director, especially if it's a writer-director. But we want to bring producers to town, because that's who Kurt wants to talk to.
Yeah.
And so they were like, film festivals are kind of lonely experiences if you're traveling by yourself. So the fact that you're bringing 2 people and that you might distribute our friend, like the fact that we're going to be able to meet the folks from Regal, that matters. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it definitely helps.
Okay.
And also just having like a great venue downtown. That was the other thing. Like you probably remember Knoxville Film Festival was always at Downtown West. Which is I'm so grateful that theater still exists, but it's not a great place for a film festival. Where do you go for drinks afterwards? The Planchos? Is that still there? Is it Planchos?
I don't think it's still there. So what they did, the 7-day shootout, they showed all 21 in one night. I was there by myself. I had 2 different couples that came to watch it.
Yeah.
But I was they screwed off afterwards.
Yeah.
And I was by myself, and I was friends with one of the people at Dogwood Arts. So we went with one of the judges over to Buckethead Tavern.
Sure.
To have a beer.
Yeah.
Because I needed to calm the hell down.
Yeah.
After that.
Yeah.
And, that's where we went. Buckethead Tavern.
Yeah.
And sat outside. Luckily, it was a nice night to sit outside.
Well, that was one of Paul's and my, I would even say, demands when we first met with Visit Knoxville. It's like, it's got to be at the downtown.
Yeah, because look how Big Ears is successful, because it's downtown. You can roam around downtown.
Oh, yeah. No, and also, like, we're not secretive about the fact that one of our main motivations, the reason Visit Knoxville is investing in this, is to have a downtown event that brings film producers to Knoxville, show them a good time. And after the last screening last year, we, a dozen of us ended up at Peter Kern Library.
Yeah.
And like, that's the kind of place that you want to go with people from LA and New York who are, you know, they've had a great experience for the weekend, and now they want to have a drink with the programming team.
Yeah.
It's like, that was awesome. That was great fun.
You walk up and say, please don't ask me for the password. Just let us in.
The red light was on. Come on, man.
Let us in, man.
Yeah.
I took a friend there, and the guy was like, you need to have the password. And I won't go, come on, man. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
What are we doing here? Just let me in. I put on pants.
Yeah.
I don't like wearing pants. You're making me wear pants. Like, just let me in.
Yeah. It was fun.
Is there, I assume, I've got some of my standard questions. I'm going to skip those because it would be stupid to say, do you have goals or a checklist? Of course you do.
Yeah.
Like, that's a silly question. But do you know what you all would like to accomplish, like, in the next 10 years with it?
10 years. I think, man, it's not that I don't have it's so our goals for this year were to basically keep the festival at the same scale.
Okay.
So we're doing, again, so what we did last year was Thursday night was, I didn't mention in talking about the elevator pitch that the other little twist that we added was there was a committee that reviewed all of the submissions. I think, again, there was like 21. They picked the best 8. And then on Thursday night, to kick off the festival, those 8 short films are shown. And then the 8 teams do a live Q&A session with the jury. And so they ask them, you know, like, what are you thinking about the budget of, if you make a feature, what are you thinking about the budget? Tell us about what we just saw. Is this the opening of the film? Is this just an important scene? Why did you, anyway. So Thursday night, we had a standing room only crowd for that. It was great. Worked much better than we expected it to.
Yeah.
It was very cool. Then on Friday, we start around dinner time. You know, people get off work, and then all day Saturday and Sunday. And so the goal for this year is to keep it about the same size. I think we had 26 screenings. And then I don't know if long term, what I would love is for us to build an audience that's big enough to justify expanding from 2 screens to maybe 3 or 4 screens, so that we can just show more stuff. We can maybe show the competition films twice so that people have more opportunities to see them.
I think there were 3 or 4 screens for that first year Knoxville Film Fest.
Yeah.
Because I really had to be judicious with what I wanted to see.
Yeah.
And it was a mix of short and long form films.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So beyond that, I would love.
Other than Claire Denis coming here and
yeah. Well, I mean, that's the only downside. Is like that's the stuff that I get most excited about.
Yeah.
But long term, I would love people in the American film industry to think of Film Fest Knox as the place that is the place to go to celebrate and talk about American regional cinema.
Okay.
That's really the focus that we've settled on. And every other decision we make is kind of along the lines of like, okay, so how will that help add to that reputation and that focus? And
how can you make Visit Knoxville and Regal go, this is why this is going to be beneficial to you, so keep funding. Keep funding.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of people don't think about, I don't think. You can have a cool idea, but if you can't figure out how to get there.
No, I mean, this is one of my topics that I could talk about for hours, but it's like cinema now is at a point, how can I put this? So one of the reasons we called it the public cinema is because we wanted people to start thinking about cinema as a public art form. So I'm very grateful to live in Knoxville because for a city our size and our political leanings, we have a free art museum. We've got a symphony orchestra. We have an opera. We have dance companies. We have big ears.
As a member of Marble City Opera, we have 2 operas.
Yeah, 2 operas.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Speak up on that one.
And
if you don't know Marble City Opera, they're doing very cool things. Well, it's in obtuse places. Like we have a show coming up at the Caverns out there in Oak Ridge, and seeing opera in the Caverns.
Yeah.
It's bonkers. Like Sorry.
Yeah, but so my argument is that those things exist because of private philanthropy and public partnerships.
Yep.
And I think that's the future of a certain kind of cinema.
Okay.
That cinema exhibition will only continue once. I mean, beyond the blockbusters, beyond the, see if you can make $200 million on opening weekend. Beyond that stuff, there just isn't as much of a market for repertory programming and like dramatic programming and stuff. So God bless the guys at Central Cinema who are still pulling it off after all these years. But Paul and I never wanted to own anything. We never wanted overhead. And so we just think partnerships like this are the only ways to make these things sustainable.
Right. It is. One good thing, let's say Everything Everywhere All at Once. I do like now that it feels like more challenging films are actually getting a response from an audience. Like, I feel like that was a slag forever. Is like the Oscars. It was like, you nominate these films and nobody sees these films. Mm-hmm. These are all small films. But then you have certain things that end up becoming hits.
Yeah.
Like The Holdovers was a hit.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those films that were nominated were interesting films that ended up becoming hits. I feel like the audience is catching up to where they should be.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? It's not all Michael Bay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although I defend the first Bad Boys. I will not defend. It's fun, but it's stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been watching Yorgos Lanthimos films for 15 years. It's insane to me that a movie as weird as
Poor Things
won Oscars.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah. I hated that film. I am not a fan.
Yeah.
I remember watching The Lobster because the woman I was dating at the time was like, this is one of the greatest films I've ever seen. So I watched it, and I physically was getting angry as I watched that film. I hated it so much.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
Sorry.
I've never been able to explain exactly why his movies work for me because they shouldn't, but...
And Poor Thing, I don't know what it was about I was just like, I can't do this, man. But I got through it.
Yeah.
I actually did not, out of all those 10 films, Anatomy of the Fall was the one that it's still getting so much acclaim. I was like, I don't understand.
Okay.
Like, I get why, like, Zone of Interest was getting that.
Yeah.
But I don't get Anatomy of a Fall. I was like, okay, there's nothing interesting to me.
Okay.
Here.
Yeah, I haven't seen it's on Paramount now or Plus or something or Hulu.
Yeah. But Zone of Interest was the one that I was like, so you're talking about like regional films where they're at is important. There's a film I'm seeing right there called Balost. Did you ever see it?
Mm-mm.
Small film, Mississippi.
Three
people.
Yeah.
The dude's never made another film.
Yeah, that guy disappeared.
And it's hardcore like Mississippi.
I feel like he has a movie coming out soon with a big star.
But I also look at that film and go, that I can't recommend this to everybody.
Yeah.
Because there are so many people that be like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, there's no explosions. What's happening?
Oh, sure.
But it's same thing with like Zone of Interest. I had a few friends. I was like, I don't think you're going to be into it, man.
Yeah.
I was like, you don't please don't watch it. Please don't watch it.
Yeah.
Two of my friends have a podcast about Westerns.
Okay.
And one of them was crapping on it's that long ass title. The Murder of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford. All that. And he's like, I hated it. And I was like, yeah, but from a like cinematic and this and this. He's like, I don't care about all that. I was like, okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Man.
Yeah, totally.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But I was like, I like it. I like it a lot. But
yeah.
I get it. I get it. Totally. One thing I will say, I grew up reading comic books. There are some of those Marvel films that are a lot better than I think. They're a lot better than I think critics are giving it credit for, and not as good as the audience.
The fanboys.
Yeah, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Captain America Winter Soldier is a great film that is 3 Days of the Condor as a comic book film.
Yeah.
Like that. Iron Man just as a the growing of a superhero is a very good film.
It's funny. I don't know why I turned it on.
Yeah.
But recently I watched The Batman. Speaking of Robert Pattinson.
Yeah.
And I was like, if he weren't wearing the cowl,
yeah,
like if it weren't Batman, I would love this movie.
I
really enjoyed it. But I would laugh when I would see like, and then
him walking amongst the cops.
Yeah.
But that was one that I didn't like Joker as much as everybody else did.
Yeah.
There are a lot of times where I watch films, I was like, I can see him acting, and that's annoying the shit out of me.
Mm-hmm.
Like with Joaquin Phoenix, it was just like, oh God, please stop. Just please stop. The Batman was one I was like, how the hell did this not get nominated for like cinematography?
Mm-hmm.
Like the cinematography and the lighting in that film is gorgeous.
Yeah.
And how they shot it is different than any other, like Matt Reeves. It's the guy who did the last two of these films.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, what the hell? Also, Gilmore Girls.
Mm-hmm.
He was, I think, he's a J.J. Abrams guy. He was, if not the co-creator of Gilmore. Was it Gilmore Girls, or am I thinking of something else?
Really?
Or am I thinking of, Felicity? I'm thinking of Felicity.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm getting those mixed up.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the Batman that I think it got 0 nominations. I was like, that's weird, man. I was like, cinematography, it should have. I read the Oscar things are the I hate and love. Because I'm like, the films that should be nominated are not getting nominated. Mm. It's like some of this stuff, I was like, damn it to all hell. I was not happy with Oppenheimer winning. I thought out of all those films, The Holdovers was the one that meant so much to me. I thought it was a great film. But Oppenheimer and Barbie I really liked. Uh-huh. I saw both of them in the same day. I did the Barbenheimer thing, which was a mistake. I did not know that my back could hurt from sitting in a movie theater for 6 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you feel about the recent push going back to physical media? Have you heard about this? Like Guillermo del Toro and Nolan have been like, we need to start buying stuff because the streamers keep removing stuff and it's not good.
Yeah, I have my collection.
Yeah.
And when I buy stuff now, it's either because it's a film I'm just like obsessed with, and so I just want to have the Blu-ray.
Yeah.
So I can watch it at any time at relatively high quality. Or I buy things because, and this is when I buy vinyl most often, is it's like a way to pay the artist and getting something.
Yeah.
So I'm more likely to buy like a Blu-ray from a small distributor.
Yeah.
That is, taking a risk on a movie that they're probably not going to make much money back from. Yeah, again, like we were talking about this before we turned on the mics, but like I've never had the collector Jones in me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not sure. I do. I think there's a weird argument that's made. I think this happens totally online. I don't think it's like a real world thing. It's like an online discourse of like, oh, Disney is taking down this movie, so it's gone.
Yeah.
That's like most of the times when people are complaining about something being taken down, I go to Amazon and I see that you can still rent it for $3.99.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's not gone. It's just not free waiting for you on the streamer when you open stuff up. There are examples where they're suppressing things.
I think it's like the Willow TV series. I don't know that you can buy it anywhere.
Yeah. No, there are definitely things where it's like they're literally just not showing movies because it's more profitable to take the tax write-off.
Oh, yeah, the Batgirl and all that
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So there are exceptions to that rule. But I tend to think that most stuff is more available now than it's ever been.
It's just not free.
It's just not free.
Yeah.
And free is all relative because you're paying for those monthly services, whatever.
Well, I think I've gone back and bought a bunch of stuff on DVD that I was like, this will never be on Blu-ray. And if it's on streaming, I'm going to have to pay for it.
Yeah.
So I'd rather have something physical that I can watch at any time.
Yeah.
And I've been proven wrong about that on a few films. Like 3 O'Clock High is one of them. I was like, I bought it on Blu-ray. I was like, I never thought this would be on Blu-ray, so I'm buying this on.
Yeah, and every once in a while, like this is, I'll go through things where it's like some of the classic movie studios will do like these, 3 for $30 or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'll go in and binge and end up with like, I bought like a dozen Vincent Minnelli films a couple years ago because I just wanted to watch all his movies.
I did that with. They did a box set of like, I think 6 Marilyn Monroe films, but it had like Some Like It Hot in there, and I was like, it's like $5 more to get the box set than it is to just buy Some Like It Hot. And so I got like Bus Stop, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. I was like, I've never seen any of these films. Like this will be a good excuse to watch these films.
Did it come with Niagara? I'm just curious.
I think so. Which I had seen Niagara because that was one that my mom and dad loved.
Really?
That film. Loved that
I watched
film.
that recently for the first time and was just like, oh, yeah, Marilyn Monroe was Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Okay. This is for you more than the Film Fest. Is there anyone you would like to work with?
In what sense?
Damn it.
Like what do you
It's a very broad question.
Yeah. Like related to the film stuff that I do?
Yeah.
Dead air.
Oh, don't worry. I'll insert the Jeopardy theme song.
I mean, so I haven't talked much about, but like the most unexpected thing about all this weird film stuff that I've done over the past 20 years is I really have gotten to meet and interview all of my heroes.
Okay.
Almost all of them.
Okay.
They aren't like names that are super familiar in the pop culture world, but just like almost, the Sight and Sound list came out this year, and the #1 film was Jean Dielman by Chantal Akerman. And like, I got to interview Chantal Akerman, and she was a notoriously difficult interviewee. But I met her on a great day, and she was in a great mood, and she gave me a hug and kisses at the end of it. And like, I've gotten to hang out with Claire Denis, my favorite. I've gotten to do these things that just I didn't expect to. And so my list of like, this isn't directly people I'd like to work with, but like, there's still a few people.
Okay. Lynch?
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know if he even wants to talk about movies. He mostly wants to talk about meditation.
I
but
don't care. I would just love to sit down and talk to him.
Yeah, and he's definitely a name that came up.
Holy shit!
With Big Ears.
Yeah.
Because Ashley had I think AC Entertainment was maybe I shouldn't talk about this, but like I feel like AC Entertainment was involved with a little festival that Lynch put together in LA, and so they'd gotten, but he doesn't do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
He only speaks publicly, I think, about transcendental meditation at this point.
I love the interviews with him where they're like, what were you trying, would you like to explain what you were trying to say with Mulholland Drive? And he went, no. And that's, I love it.
Yeah.
I love
he's
it.
the best.
I love it.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would like to see more of in film? Just in general, like the regional thing or more foreign films getting more widely distributed here in the States or anything like that?
Maybe this is sort of in the wheelhouse. Like, I fantasize about starting a nonprofit. What I would need is like $20 million seed money, right?
Hold on, let me call Jeff Bezos.
Like enough so that we could endow it and have a certain like cash flow every year, And so getting back to what I was saying earlier about like my worry is that the only way that we're going to have real cinema exhibition in towns is through public-private partnerships.
Yeah.
Is what we did with the public cinema was very cool. Like we're proud of that. We, if you throw in big years, like we had something like 300 screenings or something like that. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And it cost us $2,500.
Wow.
Which was what I spent for my used projector. And then I mean there were a couple $1,000s more here and there. Big Ears obviously spent some money, and then we would raise money through private donations, maybe $5,000, so that we could just rent the movies for legal screenings.
But it wasn't like $1 million.
We wanted if we wanted to show a little film by an independent filmmaker, we wanted to give them $300.
Yeah.
That's what the economics is at this level. It's such little money. And so my fantasy is to have this nonprofit where people in places like Knoxville reach out to get grants for seed money to start stuff like that, where it's just like, here's $20,000 and we will show you how to like establish yourself as a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Who are the people in your city who could get on board with this, like building those kinds of relationships. Because I just think like there's a place, I'm going to forget the name of it now. There's a great theater in Iowa City, Iowa that does really great programming. Iowa City is smaller than Knoxville. Mm-hmm. If they can do it, then every city of 250,000 people should have a nonprofit run theater that is, surviving. A third of its budget is coming from ticket sales and popcorn. Mm-hmm. A third is coming from memberships and private philanthropy, and a third of it is coming from the local city and state, because they know that having an arts and entertainment district brings white collar money to your town. Yeah. Like every city with 250,000 people should have that.
Yeah.
A 2-screen theater capable of 35 millimeter projection, so that you could have cool people and invite people and build partnerships. One of the things we're working on right now with Film Fest Knox is like, okay, Paul works at UT in cinema studies. How can we leverage that to have like a meaningful, productive relationship between the festival and UT?
Yeah.
Right. So like there are all these people who want to support arts culture, and typically cinema is excluded from that conversation because we think of it as like, it's $1 billion industry, man. Like, but you're seeing 70 of the movies that are released every year.
Yeah.
That's our only option. So anyway, I would love to, in my daydream, is to have this national nonprofit.
Okay.
That advocates for that kind of work in cities
it's
everywhere.
Need to be more than $20 million.
Well, I just mean $20 million for like, 25 million. I work at the UT Foundation, so I know how endowments work.
Yeah.
It's like if we had 25 million, we would have $1 million to spend every year.
Yeah.
And $1 million to spend in micro grants, 50,000 here, 10,000 there.
Yeah.
That could make a difference in small cities.
All right. And then the final question I ask everybody is, if you could talk to the 14-year-old version of yourself, what would you tell them?
Oh my gosh. 14-year-old version of me. I didn't know that was a question coming. It's such an interesting question because my daughter literally is turning 14 today.
Well, I stole it from this comedian and podcaster Ryan Sickler, who asked people what you would you tell your 16-year-old self?
Yeah.
It's like 16's not it, 14. That's when you're starting high school and you're just kind of getting in there. So all credit due to Ryan Sickler, but 14 is where it's at, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a... Having watched my daughter go through 8th grade, it's like that old saying, it gets better, is 90% of it, because the social life of a 14-year-old just sucks for the most part. Man, I like the 14-year-old me. Like in hindsight, I think I was a I've always been like somebody who doesn't have a ton of friends, but who gets along with like everybody.
Yeah.
And has like a sort of an even keel.
Yeah.
It's still the case. I think it was the case when I was 14. And so I don't know, man. I want to like give that kid a hug.
Okay.
And just tell him it's gonna, you know, you're trust yourself. Like you're gonna make some good decisions.
I know Florida State seems like a weird choice. But trust me.
Yeah.
Everything good happens because
Yeah, I'm going to be thinking about that all day. I got to go celebrate my daughter's 14th birthday today. Yeah.
Well, thank you for being on.
Oh, man, I appreciate it. It's good.